if people get executed for being
No.
gay, I don't care that some isolationist.
So you think we should go into invade every country that accuse people of being gay?
If they don't reform, like for example, let's say we take down Iran.
Come on, Kevin.
No. I'm answering your question. I'm answering your question. As Hitchens said, look, we can't fight everybody at once. We have to go down the line. But once you take out,
Hitchens never worked in foreign policy.
I don't believe you would have to, because once you take out Iran and North Korea in quick succession, all these other regimes. All these other regimes
as well now.
These other regimes, Michael. Once you prove to the world that within 2 years you've taken down 2 of these huge reactionary powers. Once that's clear, now all of a sudden you've got Venezuela. Now you've got Syria. You've got all these regimes. You've got all these regimes. You've got all these regimes calling up Washington and asking, what can we do to not go down that route?
Hey, Kevin, how's it going?
Yo, let's go. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you, and the beard gets bigger every time, Kevin.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Okay, there we are.
Wonderful. So would you both like to introduce yourselves?
Sounds good.
Sure.
Do you want to go first, Kev, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I'll go first. So, hello, everybody. Some of you probably know me already from Hippy Dippy and past debates. I'm Kevin Castley. I am a liberal hawk, feminist, anti-theist, and socially progressive, economically liberal content creator who streams every day, 7 days a week to Twitch, and upload content to YouTube, both at SuperPower Broadcasting. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Castley. I'm looking forward to this debate. So yeah, thank you. And thanks to Dylan for hosting.
No problem. And Mike, would you like to introduce yourself?
So hi, my name is Michael Hilliard. I've been a conflict journalist for 10 years, reporting from war zones in Iraq, Iran, Ukraine, Turkey, Russia, Xinjiang, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, as well as European conflicts. I work at a Central Asia think tank, working very closely with the US State Department on policy towards Central Asia, Russia, Afghanistan, and Xinjiang. And I also host The Red Line, which is a podcast where we have guests from the White House, CIA, Oxford, Harvard, Cambridge, talking about foreign policy issues that are affecting the news around the place. So very happy to be here, and long-time fan of the show. So glad to be here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Of course, those with CIA ties would be fans of my shows, with my weapons smuggling events. So for everybody who wanted to know my CIA ties, figured it out. Okay. So, would either of you like to just tell everybody your disagreement before we get into it, and I just play some ground rules to make sure we keep it mostly, so you don't yell at each other. Okay?
Of course. So my disagreement with Kevin is mostly stemming from his talk of invading, Iraq, Iran, Syria, and his adversity that pulled out of Afghanistan. Frankly, all the policy would disagree with him. All the experts would disagree with him. Anyone who's been on the ground would disagree with him. And frankly, calling for a war with Iran particularly is such a disastrous movement that it frankly boggles the mind to even suggest that it's possible and won't be absolutely catastrophic to do. And I'd love to know where he's basing his decisions on an invasion from Iran on.
Okay.
Okay, and you give your perspective quickly on the disagreement, just to make sure we both know what the disagreement is.
Yeah. So for me, thanks, Dylan. So for me, on that point, I would dispute the claim that all experts and people on the ground are opposed to or were opposed to staying in Afghanistan. Obviously, our debates or our disagreement stems from even before the pullout. If you go back on Twitter, I believe we had a bit of a back and forth a while ago. But basically, Dan Crenshaw, for example, is somebody who actually served in Afghanistan who supported staying there. One of my friends, fellow content creators, American Madhouse, he's a war veteran. He served in Afghanistan during the surge. He supported staying there, for example. Thought it was a disgrace that Joe Biden, or White Flag Joe, as I call him, pulled out. So, I mean, we can both find people that would disagree or agree with what Biden did. I think that for the purpose of this debate, it's probably better for us to just kind of have a back and forth based on our disagreements, as opposed to just putting, this person said that, Bolton said this, Biden said that, On the point about Iraq, I think it's very clear that the majority of the issues with the Iraq war and how it was handled actually stemmed from Iranian interference. And so that's why I've said that, if you wanted the Iraq war to go better, taking out Iran at the same time would have made that a lot better, because you wouldn't have had then the IRGC and their proxies in Iraq basically funding an insurgency, basically doing all that bullshit. So anyway, that's kind of my standpoint there. You can say it's laughable, but what I find laughable, and honestly more disgraceful, is this complete indifference and this complete lack of empathy for 40 million Afghans that just got thrown into the dark ages thanks to Joe Biden. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna, before we get into it, I just want to lay down some ground rules. So now I have a general idea of the disagreement. So if we go outside into something like outside this purview, I'll be like, hey, let's bring it back in if you start debating ice cream flavors or something. And so my rules generally are this. Number one, we don't break any terms of service for Twitch and or YouTube, because obviously this is going to be broadcasted on both platforms most likely. Secondly, there would be no attacking immutable characteristics, no going after people for being, say, Jewish, trans, black, white, Hindu, Christian, that type of stuff. So, sadly, you cannot bully Kevin for being Canadian. You're not allowed to.
I'm Canadian myself. I'm a dual citizen.
So you guys can't, but I can still bully you both for being Canadian, and I will. Of course. Wonderful. Besides that, since it's a 1v1 debate, I'm not going to make you be like let's say you say something mean. I'm not gonna stop you from doing that. I think that shows people character. But I will say to both of you, you get a lot more flies with honey the vinegar, and that's a personal tip. Always be nice. Make sugar your favorite spice, right? So that's a personal tip. Besides that, I don't really have much more rules than that. Then I will try to reel it in. Or if you guys need something fact-checked by me, if you trust me to be a neutral source, I will do it if necessary. Okay?
Yep.
Anything else you want me to do, or anything else?
No, all good. And
okay.
I'll address I'm happy to address Afghanistan first. So effectively, the Afghanistan war has been lost since effectively 2005, and the situation has been untenable for quite a long time. Even when I was actually embedded with the Taliban in 2018, they weren't even buying weapons at that point because they were capturing so much ground and taking so much equipment with them. This has effectively been a lost war for a very long time. And the difference is that no one had the balls to pull out because it is politically disastrous to do so, as we've seen with Biden. Obviously working with the State Department, we were getting, hour by hour briefs on what was going on, as well as the fact that we were getting, reports on the ground. And 3 weeks before before August, effectively the Taliban had captured more territory than even everyone thought possible, because effectively the US had poorly trained them. So we trained the ANA to effectively have the same doctrine the US Army does, which is, if you get attacked, call in air support, but we didn't give them the air support. Payments hadn't been given quite often. We had a lot of problems with ghost soldiers, where a commander would say he had 200 soldiers and take 200 wages, but only have about 10 under his command. And all of the cities effectively towards the west of the country had fallen, as well as the north and the south. So by that point, we went to August, and speaking with friends at the State Department, their words were, look, we have about a month and a half until this thing keels over. Now, what happened then at that point was effectively the Taliban did what they stick with their agreements, and they have been very amenable to their agreements at this point. And they pulled out to the edge of the city and gave the US a month and a half to effectively get their ass out of Dodge. What then happened is effectively people on Twitter and obviously people in the city started hearing, talk of Taliban encampments on the edge of the city. And a lot of ANA guys threw their gear off, understandably. They don't want to be the last person to throw the gear off. So immediately riots and looting start in the city, and Biden gets left with a choice of A, let the Taliban enter the city a month and a half before. And again, this is not an unknown quantity. We've seen the Taliban effectively governing most of the major cities in the west and the south, as well as the north and the Tajik-dominated areas, even though they're majority Pashtun. And let them take control of the city and let them take the policing role, and they can adapt that within 12 hours, or B, resurge with approximately 9,000 American troops and be effectively blind for 3 days and form more and more of a panic in the city. So I think Biden made the right choice of letting the Taliban effectively adopt the positions of police and law enforcement in the city. And the Taliban have been very decent with their occupation in that point. They weren't attacking the embassies. Every journalist you talk with over there was effectively waiting for the famous last, chopper out of Saigon shot, but there was none. Effectively, the Taliban were escorting embassy staff to the airport, and the airport was fairly reasonable, and from friends who are actually on the ground, you can see that, on one half of the airport, it's this chaotic American leaving. And if you actually go to the domestic terminals, it's, Taliban selling Pringles. It's really not as chaotic as probably most people made it out to be. So now we have the problem of, the Taliban are adopting the positions of policing and fire and everything else, and they're not attacking US staff. In fact, when they take the famous, in the palace, press conference with Al Jazeera gets there way before because they let everyone know. They give the US time to clear out. And it's why the US lost no casualties to the Taliban over their evacuation. It was, again, not a great solution, but we've been there for 20 years. We've spent, after the interest payments are going to have to be paid, we spent $6.7 trillion on that conflict, and we've got effectively nothing out of it. Also, your statement about, let's just stay there. And, Dan Crenshaw particularly has some ties with the defense community, and he takes a lot of money from Northern Grumman, so he'd love to stay there. But your staying there is absolutely ludicrous, because effectively we are funding the complete Afghan government when we're there, and it forces international investment not to be able to go in. If you want to build a pipeline in Afghanistan, who do you actually get the license from? If, let's say, you go with your idea of having a city-state, American-owned Kabul, then if you apply to the Kabul government for a license, they can't do anything. Their authority doesn't exceed 2 k's outside of the city limits of Kabul. But if you go and do you apply to the Taliban because they're actually in control of the area with the mines and the pipes? No, because then the US would deem you working with terrorism. So your idea of working with the Taliban effectively is just ridiculous. We had to do something to change the game. And after 20 years, it's a pretty good point that we've lost this one. Already we've seen the Taliban effectively taking on government. They just released their first budget 2 days ago, and they're governing fairly reasonable. The Taliban, even 3 years ago, calls between the Taliban weren't death to America. They were, hey, do you have an Excel spreadsheet to run the dams out here? Hey, what's the best day to do garbage collection? Because they've moved to a governance position. It's as much as you say they're abandoned to 80,000 terrorists. It's the calmest that Kabul's been in 20 years. Again, I'm talking with guys on the ground. I get the actual work because I do work in this department. I work in foreign policy. So I'm getting the actual numbers and briefs. And the only attacks coming out now are from ISIS-K. This is effectively the calmest Kabul's been. In Kabul, the government in Taliban has been able to make deals with Central Asian republics, the Indians, the Pakistanis, and investment is starting to trickle in. Something that would not be possible under your model of a US-run Kabul. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, yeah, so there's a lot there. So let's just go one by one. So go through the points as I remember them. You mentioned, well, first, we'll start off with the 20 years line. It's very convenient, very easy to say, it's 20 years. Okay, well, let's look at the distribution of troops over that 20 years. You look at the graph of it, very relatively small numbers under Bush to take out the Taliban from power. Then you had big numbers under Obama during the surge, and that's when you had, relatively stable Kabul and some of the cities and whatnot, and you had a lot of growth in terms of, business, entrepreneurship. You had obviously women and girls going to school. In 2001, when the war began, the Taliban had effectively allowed 0 girls, for all intents and purposes, to get a meaningful education. And by 2020, it was about 3 million that were able to go to school. So that's one substantive difference there. The second was, again, going back to the troop numbers. You look at what happened after Obama's troops surge. They went down substantially. Now, under Obama, even after the surge, they were still relatively high compared to recent years. But then under Trump in particular, and then under Biden, they went down to as low as 2,500. So it's very easy to say, oh, the war was lost. The war's been 20 years. But if you actually look at it, it's like 3 different sorts of strategies over that time. So relatively low to medium under Bush, get the Taliban out, do some nation building, high numbers under Obama, fight the Taliban. Obviously, the Afghan National Army lost roughly 65,000 of their personnel fighting the Taliban. It's a point that's often mentioned that they gave up, that they should have fought for their own country, this sort of thing. Yet they lost Almost all of the fighters that died fighting the Taliban were Afghan National Army. They weren't American, they weren't Australian, they weren't Canadian. It was almost all the A&A. You know, the vast majority of it was A&A. So they fought harder than anybody else in that regard. Once the government was established and everything, the republic was established. The second point then about this is that, so it's kind of it kind of loses the context to just say, oh, it's been 20 years, because Trump and Biden didn't really take it that seriously. Trump had reduced the troop numbers down to such an extent that really they were at that point almost just security service for the capital area at that point, and it was the Afghan National Army that was fighting the Taliban. So it wasn't the same war as under Obama. And I've argued that if you were to keep up, not even 100,000 troops over a longer period of time, but, you know, surge level troops, as, you know, as politicians such as McCain and whatnot supported troop surges, they tend to work. And yes, it takes time, but the downside is if you don't do it, then you wind up with what happened, which is that, as Michael noted, yes, because the troop numbers were so low under Trump and Biden, the Taliban was actually able to take cities in the West and eventually went on to take, you know, even Jalalabad, everywhere outside of Kabul. And at that point, yeah, it would have required sending about 3 times the numbers just to stabilize the situation, and would have required a lot more boots to be sent over there. Yet for a long time, there was more than 9,000, or there were more than 9,000 troops there anyway. So the point about how it was inevitable, it was a lost war from 2005, that's not really true. And the fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, people can talk about $300 million a day, you know, the money. I do want to talk about the money point that that Michael Hilliard brought up, but basically the point was that if you look at recent expenditures, the point of time that actually matters, by the time that the troop numbers were down to 2,500, the actual cost of the war was closer to $14 to $20 billion a year, not the huge numbers, trillions that you'll hear. Almost all of that was spent before Trump was in power. So that's an important point to note, was that the majority of the cost of the war were in the years where the main fighting of the Taliban was taking place. Now, the point to note about, oh, well, it's just Kabul or whatever is like, what, 6 million people or whatever, that alone is a substantial project worth preserving. Keeping a base at Bagram is important. Even if you didn't care about the people on the ground, having a permanent base there is a great, you know, it's a great place to have, considering China and Russia. And the US has permanent bases in Germany and Japan, and those countries are doing totally great right now. And so I wanted to talk about the cost of the war because, of course, you brought up the cost of the war. You said including interest, it would run close to 7 trillion, I think 6.7 trillion. The problem that I have with that is that, well, that's technically true. Nobody talks about the cost with interest for literally anything else. Nobody talks about that for infrastructure bills. Nobody talks about that for roads. They only do that when it's the military, to try to make military endeavors sound way more expensive than they actually are. Because, of course, the US is a country in debt. And for a lot of projects that the US does, domestic or foreign, it requires going into debt. You only really hear the debt emphasized if it's, you know, forever wars, Neocon wars or whatever. And so you don't really hear about it too much on the domestic angle, even though having a permanent presence in Afghanistan, or at least being there long enough until the Afghan National Army could look after themselves and the government could defend themselves from the Taliban, which, as Michael even alluded to, they knew wasn't now. Now was not the time to leave, because you had 1.5 months to, if you want to be charitable, Biden had 6 months before the government in Kabul fell. So he knew there was a 0% chance that they'd be able to stick it out on their own. That's not the time to leave. And so I would argue here, ultimately, just to kind of close with my response, that it's all well and good to say the Afghan or the Taliban specifically, that the Taliban forces were nice to American diplomats and nice to American journalists. Okay, but those same journalists captured on film the Taliban totally beating the shit out of innocent people on the ground, you know? And yeah, you can say they're not Americans or whatever. Some Americans, it was reported, were actually hassled by the Taliban on their way to the airport. But what about the people on the ground? Do they not matter simply because they were born in a different country? I find this sort of relativism and ultimately what I would amount to almost solipsism of our people matter, people over there don't really matter very much, to honestly I would honestly characterize it as disgraceful. The Taliban was raping corpses and whatnot. Yet yet you're characterizing them as how they're nice, how they're nice, and we could do business with them. And now, oh well, if you want to build a pipeline with the Taliban, it's working with terrorists. How about this? How about we don't recognize the legitimacy of the Taliban? How about that? How about whatever happened to no negotiating with terrorism? So
Okay, holy shit, there's so much
so
more
can I
back
give
here.
it one tip before we continue? It's better probably, instead of doing paragraph to paragraph, a bunch of different topics, you start on one topic and you have a back and forth on that one topic so you can go through it all. Because if you do this, it's just going to be paragraph to paragraph.
Okay. So I'll just quickly address some of these points. First of all, holy shit. Yeah, raping corpses, that's a new one. So let's just address let's address some of the footage, some of the thing actually there. First of all, I actually speak with people on the ground all the time. You know, the part of my job is to actually know what's going on over there. I'm not watching YouTube videos from Alex Jones. I'm actually getting the proper briefs on this one. So I can tell
Alex
you
supports your position. Alex wanted to leave, dude.
Again, so the Taliban are being somewhat better than we expected. You know, you said that they don't allow women to have education. They are allowing women to have education. Again, I'm not pro-Taliban government. I don't want that system of government here. But to say, oh, we can't allow the Taliban, but frankly, they have the same effective government standards in Brunei, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, Oman, and, you know, should we invade those guys? Probably not. It's just a different system of government, not one I like, but we don't have any other options. And right now, you are talking about either, you know, you said that under Obama that they were winning the war. No, they weren't. Effectively, most of the Obama operations, even when they started going to Helmut and areas like that, were they'd take it during the day and they retreat back to the bases at night. And I would not call that winning the war. You know, Obama did not win this war and he did not conquer the whole country. He never did. Frankly, the big project under Obama was to build the ring road back up, something that the Soviets had tried to do when they surged, and that didn't work either. You know, it just boggles my mind that that's even in question here. You know, we didn't win that war. Now, the other one you said is 25,000. We'd lost 25,000 Americans in this. It wasn't just A&A. And again, you know, you say, oh, well, it's only 2.7 trillion. You know, if we want to surge and do what you're asking for, so effectively push in, let's say, 150,000 American troops to gain bases in Afghanistan, which not particularly useful bases. You know, we've got, you know, our counter-Iranian bases all over the Middle East. When it comes to the Central Asians, that's mostly the Russian Chinese backyard, and we've got bases in Pakistan. So again, you're advocating for putting 100,000 troops on the ground.
We got a fact check. You said 25,000 U.S. service members lost their lives in Afghanistan. That's wrong.
I've literally got the data right here.
2,500. I'd love to see your sourcing.
You want me to look it
so
up?
20. Yeah, look it up. 25.
Check right now.
25,000 is what we lost.
25,000. That's bullshit. 65,000 A&A, 2,500 American.
So your suggestion is we put 100,000 troops and we spend trillions more dollars on something that is actually going to end up being worse because no one can put international investment in. You're effectively creating a client state which doesn't work. The only way to actually get Afghanistan to be able to stand on its feet is to be able to build it with a centralized government that works and actually can do deals with international partners in Tajikistan, in Turkmenistan, in India, Pakistan, Iran, and actually get to work with this. You know, fact is,
there's a lot of points there. Like Dylan wanted us to go point by point.
So take that point. So explain to me why you think that we should, in God's name, put 100,000 more troops in there, and why that would be an improvement on what we have now. And again, don't tell me it's that I don't care about the citizens there, because I've actually spent time with these citizens. I've actually been on the ground. I've talked with these people. I'm not basing my stuff off YouTube videos. This is actually real, and they don't want the Americans there because this is the calmest it's been in a long time.
I love the accusation that I base my views on this on YouTube videos. The only other YouTube content creator I know who makes regular content specifically advocating for a continued presence there is Spooky Nukies, who has less than 10,000 subscribers. He's awesome, but apart from him, nobody's talking about this, or if they are, they're like, end the Neocon wars and stuff. Like YouTube is a cesspool of isolationism and solipsism and nihilism, and so I'd love it to get the fact check on your numbers there. But
I've checked a few. I checked 4 sources, and they all line up on something. And so the number is about 2,400. Now, if you include contractors, the number increases by another 3.8 thousand. But I'm not seeing anything that says 25,000. Could you tell me the source on that?
Are you including wounded on there?
Okay, so
well,
casualties.
Lost.
You're saying casualties?
A casualty is a wounded. Yes.
Deaths. Okay.
Okay, when
I'm
you
talking
said
about
lost,
deaths.
I thought you meant killed
again,
when you
Okay,
said lost.
casualties. If you're saying casualties, then I'm assuming that you're probably right on that, and Kevin thought it was that. It was just miscommunication.
Okay, that's a miscommunication. All good. But I'm talking casualties. Obviously, if someone loses both their legs and an arm, that's not really, they're not the same as when they walked in.
Right. Okay, but when you said lost, I thought you meant
lost
killed.
means lost is what a casualty is, and it means you can't go back to the front line. That's
okay. Okay. Well,
is.
I'm used to hearing lost usually mean dead, casualty meaning injury or death.
Moving on from that point.
Okay.
What is your actual plan for effectively? Why would your plan of putting 100,000 in here be better when it's not what the Afghans want? It's not what anyone who's actually educated on this wants, and it's only what Dan Crenshaw and a few other guys want.
Well, okay, educated. Dan Crenshaw, I believe, has a degree from Harvard, if I recall correctly, but that's almost beside the point. Again, as I said before, we can find people on my side that are more hawkish that wanted to stay there, and we can find people on your side that wanted to leave. We should, for the purpose of this debate, talk about the morality, the numbers, the costs, etc. Before I address your point, I want to get to the few points that you mentioned in your rebuttal to me, which was you first talked about how, well, you kind of scoffed at the idea that I would be outraged by what the Taliban was doing, their atrocities, because you said, well, there's Brunei, and there's Saudi Arabia, and there's the UAE. I would agree with that because I'm not a fan of what happens in Saudi Arabia. I'm not a fan of what happens in Brunei. But this ultimately goes back to, Jean Kirkpatrick doctrine, the idea that, we're relatively on our own. The democracies in the world are somewhat small. You have to sometimes work with bad actors against worse actors. And in fact, Saudi Arabia has been reforming as a result of both US pressure and MBS's sort of Vision 2030 sort of stuff in a slightly more progressive direction. Whereas the Taliban, on the other hand, they'll have the rhetoric of how, oh yeah, we'll let women and girls go to school and everything. But then you actually look into what's happening. Women can't actually go to university. They make it so that it's almost impossible for them to even get there. Obviously, they have to be accompanied by men and all this sort of stuff. There's so many draconian rules with the Taliban that in some ways, I mean, especially when we want to compare it to the United Arab Emirates, the United Arab Emirates looks like Canada compared to the Taliban, basically. It's not the same level of strict Sharia and whatnot.
Get to your point of, okay, so women can go to university, and they have been, and we've seen even women judges starting to get up in Afghanistan at the moment. But I still don't understand what apart from the fact that women can go to school, what is the improvement on spending let's call it another $6 trillion to act? If you go on you want peak funding levels to send $6 trillion on a city state that we can't go outside of, they can get no one out in. So again, if you're talking about, if you're putting, if you're no.
Okay, one second. We're gonna we'll have Mike finish his question, and then we'll have Kevin respond because I want to make sure Kevin can respond to your full question.
Yeah. Again, you talked about putting a full, actually, let's put the proper amount of troops in. So above Obama levels, because we've established that Obama levels did not capture the country. So you are going to need to take the peak spending and double it. So we're now spending $600 million a day. For what? And this is what, that women can go to school. Yeah, frankly, international investment will pressure them to do that anyway. This Taliban is very different to the Taliban of 01, and we've seen that because they're desperate for international investment from other partners here. Why?
China.
Yeah, that's
China's not concerned about the humanitarian situation, dude. You think the Chinese Communist Party is going to be like, we'll give you money, but make sure.
No, but China is
Dude, okay, I'll answer your
question.
No.
Let me finish because China actually does care because they actually want a stable Afghanistan because everyone wants the pipelines, everyone wants the mines, and by them being draconian, it's more likely to burst out. This is not me saying this. This is RAND. This is the State Department. And again, I don't understand where you're coming from here because this is what the experts are saying on the ground. This is literally what I do for a day job, and I'm employed in the field. And I'm curious to know where you're getting your information from here, or if you've ever worked in.
That makes this more embarrassing because you've got work experience. You don't give a shit about the people on the ground.
Let's stop for a second. Okay. So, Mike, you asked a few questions, so I want to make sure he can answer. Just question after question after question. It piles up a little. So, Kevin, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so there's a few points there. I want to finish my first point, which was asked earlier about, well, how do you square this with Saudi Arabia and everything else? there's a great Christopher Hitchens quote about this where he says basically, you can't, dude, you can laugh, but come on, you're citing the State Department. The State Department is a bunch of CERN bros where the most they'll say is, we're concerned about what's happening on the ground, but war bad. We're not actually going to do anything to stop it. Look, you can say you hate the Taliban, but it's like saying Saddam was a bad guy. It's like, that doesn't mean anything if you're not going to remove him from power. But additionally, and we can get to that later, but I wanted to say on the point about Saudi Arabia, because it was asked of me, understand something. If Saudi Arabia doesn't get in line after, you know, it goes back to that line from Christopher Hitchens, which is, we can't go to war with everybody at once. But once we're finished dealing with the most pressing matters on the chopping block, if these other guys don't get it in line, they're next. They're next. And we'll come for all of you eventually. We just can't do it all at the same time. So I don't see a logical contradiction in having limited resources and limited force to be like, okay, we'll address Iran and we'll address the Taliban, or we'll address the Taliban and we'll address Syria, versus, oh, well, I disagree with every other government, so let's, or I disagree with a bunch of these governments, so let's literally invade all of them at the same time. That's bad strategy. That's dumb. That's stupid, and it sets a bad precedent. So that's my answer to your earlier point. You asked about the cost. And so again, I do want to note, you know, you say 6.7 trillion, that was over 20 years. That I'm not saying I want to spend another 6.7 trillion. It wouldn't, if you hadn't pulled out, it wouldn't have cost the same amount of time over the next 10 or no. Look, dude, you can scoff at this, but the reality is, if you look at the actual cost of the war, the cost per day went down after the surge. The cost of the day.
But you're talking about increasing the numbers.
No. You claimed that I wanted to send more troops than Obama. Dude, let me answer your goddamn question. So you made the claim that I wanted to send more than 100,000 troops to Afghanistan. I've never actually argued that before. You can find clips of me arguing for surge level troops sustained over a longer period of time. I never said double the surge number of troops. I never said 200,000. I never said 600 million a day. That's a mischaracterization of my view. What I believe here is very simple, that Obama's surge wasn't going to annihilate and wipe out and extinguish the Taliban forever. But what it would have done, had it been protracted for longer, what it would have done was bought more time for the Afghan government to develop, for their institutions to develop. And we know that their institutions were developing. We know they actually, as a matter of fact, went to a level where 28% of Afghan parliamentarians were women. That, in a very conservative country, that's pretty impressive and remarkable. Additionally to that, corruption was going down as well. And so like, you can laugh, but again, you think that we should just do business with the Taliban, and I would call that morally corrupt. I would call that morally bankrupt. And additionally to this, I find taking their face value. You said, oh, well, the Taliban, they're going to be nice to girls this time. They're a different Taliban because they want money and this sort of thing. That's very naive. That's very naive, because even if you could say, oh, well, they're doing some propaganda, this and that, try to get investment and everything. The fact of the matter is, they've been meeting with China, and a lot of that investment is probably going to come from China. And I don't know if you know this, Michael, but the last time I checked, Communist China was our enemy, threatening to nuke your country, threatening to nuke Australia. Back in, I think it was March, they threatened to burn Canberra if Canberra didn't let up on the sanctions over the Xinjiang genocide. So, I mean, you can laugh at this, but at the end of the day, all of your worldview, the fact that you laughed when I brought up Christopher Hitchens, proves that you're not a humanist, you are a relativist, and you are, at the end of the day, a solipsist who doesn't care about the people on the ground. Because to you, you're like, oh, well, it costs money. Okay, well, even if you only care about your own people, that's still, as Dan Crenshaw said, your anti-terror insurance. He didn't say 6.7 trillion with interest. Yeah, 2 point whatever trillion, if we want to use the terms that everybody actually agrees on, that everybody uses objectively. Over 20 years, guess how much the US produced over those 20 years? They produced 400 trillion plus of output. That works out per year to about 0.25% was expended on Afghanistan. I spend a higher percent of my annual income, higher than 0.25% of my income, on stuff like padlocks and car alarms and all that stuff. If you average it out, average people spend more on insurance and security than what the US was spending in Afghanistan. And they're a freaking country. So
let's just address some of these things. First of all, nuke Australia. The only country that has a first strike nuclear policy is the United States, and you should know that. The second one, corruption. Corruption was absolutely.
Russia has.
No, they don't. Russia abandoned. Abandoned their first. Russia abandoned their first strike policy. And again,
on
Kevin,
paper. On paper.
Kevin, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been outside North America?
Have I ever been outside North America? No, and I don't think it's particularly relevant because you have.
I think that's very. I think that's very
Taliban.
okay. So let's talk about Iran then, because you say we can get all this. First of all, I couldn't find that Christopher Hitchens quote because you quoted it at me. And again, Christopher Hitchens' only book on Iraq came out in 2005.
No, it wasn't in a book. It was an interview that he was given.
Sure. So let's talk Iran. I'm curious. You say you're a foreign policy guy. Let's go through the very basics of an Iranian invasion. Where do you put the troops? Where do you build up the American troops for an invasion of Iran?
Sure. Yeah, you send them into the southwest, occupy the oil fields.
What? Okay. Where do you know? It's a 3-month build up at least. So where are you going to build those troops up?
Well, you've got U.S. assets in Saudi Arabia, and
So look, Saudi Arabia, fantastic. Now you have to go through Iraq, which is currently very pro-Shia, who are going to be very shitty with you going through Iran or going through Iraq. And as well as the fact that we killed Soleimani means that the US, they are desperate to try and, the government in Iraq at the moment is desperate to try and show it's not pro-American. And they have directly asked us not to put American troops there. So effectively you are saying that we need to invade Iraq to go through Iran. That's the very first problem we're going to hit up against. So any ideas?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, what I was saying before about Iran was I mentioned 2003. The U.S. actually, along with the U.S. invasion of Iraq, the U.S. was invading the Ba'athist state at that time. So it would have been basically a continuous sort of front in that war going into the southwest. Look, I'm trying to answer your question, dude. Mm-hmm. Going into the southwest, where there's a big plurality of the oil fields, if you're able to cut them off from their access to where they get almost all their revenues.
What's the southwest province called? What's the Southwest province called? Go ahead.
I don't know the name offhand, but I know what you're trying to do here. I know what you're trying to do.
It's called Kurdistan.
Discredit my knowledge of various areas or whatever. Well,
name any of the provinces.
Michael. Here's the problem, Michael, which is that despite your experience, your absolute disregard for people and for liberalism is an embarrassment, because it'd be better if you had no experience making these claims about the Taliban. The fact that you've got this experience and you laugh at Christopher Hitchens, it proves that you, at the end of the day, you said, well, it's not in my country. They haven't attacked my country. Oh, that's great. Go and hang out with Donald Trump and the America Firsters. They'll love to have you, dude.
Wait. Let's drag it back for a second, because Kevin never actually got to answer the question. So it diverted to a conversation about experience. I want to make sure. Not that question. The question before that. There was a question before that was posed to Kevin. I want to make sure he gets to answer that.
Okay, which specific question? There's so many that have come up tonight.
It was about the invasion of Iraq, then Iran.
Iran. Yeah. Go ahead. You have to effectively go attack Iraq to go into Iran at the moment.
Yeah. So
and that's if you're building up in Kuwait, by the way, because Saudi Arabia, yeah, you're gonna have to go.
So in 2003, Iraq had.
Yeah, we're not talking 2003. We're talking right now. And you've talked about it.
I'm trying to give context. I'm trying to answer your goddamn question.
We do have to let Kevin answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fuck's sakes. Okay, so I mean, you can talk about your work experience or whatever. You actually need to work on your listening skills, kid. Anyway, so on the point about Iran,
I'm older than you.
What the fuck? Iran, well, I mean, you have the moral right and wrong of a kid. So let's get serious. So. Yeah, morality matters, okay? Morality actually matters in this, right? You can laugh and say, oh, can you believe he wants progressivism in Iran? Oh, what a goofy guy. Look at this Neocon. Look at this hawk. Ooh.
Morality.
Okay, so I'm trying to answer your question,
Okay.
So, to answer your question,
I want to hear Kevin answer the question. So I know I said I'm not going to make you nice, but for this brief moment, so we can get an answer about this question, right? I want to make sure no insults, just pure, and no interruptions. Just pure answer the question, Kevin.
Okay. Yeah. So in 2003, Iraq had, and I'm not going back. I'm just trying to give some context, because you asked about the logistics and how that would work. In 2003, Ba'athist Iraq had somewhere between the 4th and 5th largest military in the world, and the U.S. invaded, and the U.S. took down that entire regime in less than 2 months. So Iraq today doesn't have anywhere near that sort of strength, and they don't have anywhere near that sort of I wouldn't say political unity, but that sort of political terror to resist the U.S. If the U.S. were to go in, they wouldn't meet anywhere near the amount of resistance today as was met when the U.S. actually invaded Iraq, specifically invaded Iraq during 2003. And so you could say, well, there's a lot of Shiites there that would not like to have the U.S. there. Well, sure, absolutely. And there's Iranian militias and stuff and all that. Yeah, it's great. But the point is, there's a broader concern here, which is that Iran is currently, even by the United Nations, and I'm not a fan, I want to abolish the UN, but even the UN has said that Iran is in possession of upwards of 12 times, and this was a while ago, 12 times of the permitted levels of enriched uranium under the JCPOA. And so Iran is working towards getting nuclear weapons. If they initiate a nuclear war with Israel or attack U.S. bases, the amount of death toll, no, you can laugh, but this is a regime that's unhinged. This is a regime that routinely brags about wanting to nuke Israel. If they actually make good on those threats, the amount of death toll that you're going to have, and it's going to lead to a war anyway, it's going to result in a lot more of your own casualties. And now the war's happened anyway, but it started on their terms. So why wait for them to start the war on their terms? Why not start the war on your terms?
Again, I've actually spent time in Iran. I've actually met with Iranian politicians. I've actually spent time in the Iranian parliament. I can tell you that they aren't going to nuke us. Why would they? They have a bunch of... Oh, cool. Yeah. Now I am naive because I've actually done some actual time in the region.
Yeah, you went and shot the SO piece and they impressed you. Great.
Okay.
Fucking
So,
Dennis Rodman
look,
loved Kim. So.
Okay. So why would Iran use nukes? Because the moment you use nuclear weapons, you actually open the nuclear Pandora's box. So Iran has a lot of other options open to it. So for instance, it can close the Strait of Hormuz by sinking a bunch of boats in there, which is part of the Iranian doctrine. Which effectively will cattle the economies of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Iraq. Step one. Step two, most of the prisons that are holding ISIS territory, and this is something I talked about with Joseph Vodal on the show, who again, head of Central Command for the Middle East, and this is his concern with the invasion of Iran, is that most of the prisons are being run by Shia militias. So even if we go after Iran, they can open up the prisons, release all the ISIS guys, they can close the Strait of Hormuz, and as well as the Houthi rebels effectively are sending medium-range missiles at the moment to attack either Saudi desalination plants, which is hugely problematic for the Saudis, or close the Bab el-Aman Strait. Even if they shoot 2 or 3 boats, the insurance price goes up. So even let's play day one, you walk into Iraq, from a Saudi Arabian position. Iraq is now going to be shitty at you and your Shia militias are going to attack your supply chains. So now you either have to run a pacification operation in Iraq before you even get to Iran. And again, on day one, Iran can close the Strait of Hormuz. Iran, day one, can start doing things like releasing prisoners, can start attacking US supply chains. You've cattled effectively the entire US oil market and things go haywire in the US economically, and you haven't even got through Iraq yet. Now, even if you get, and you take Kurdistan, I'm curious, which one of the Iranian provinces you're actually going to invade into? Because you said Kurdistan, you couldn't name Kurdistan, that's fine. But you went.
So when do I get to respond to this? Because you've already brought up a lot of points. So are we taking this point by point, or are we doing paragraphs? So
point by point.
The first, fine. Okay, so the first point, you mentioned, oh, well, if you do this, they'll close the Strait of Hormuz. It's like, yeah, no shit, it's a war. Of course they're going to do that. That's obviously a part of this, right? So I was bringing up the point that it's better to start the war on your terms than wait for them to start it on their terms. Right now, they're engaged in an empire of blood, funding and hyping up and arming the Houthis in Yemen. They've got their buddies in Syria, obviously, Assad. They've assisted Hamas, and they fired 4,000 rockets at Israel. So this is a big problem, and to just kind of let Iran keep doing what they're doing is basically, it's been described as a shadow war as it stands already. But to answer the question about the what did you say? You brought up the point about the ISIS fighters, for example. Okay, well, ISIS is not 100% pro-Iran. As you would probably know, ISIS and Iran have pretty different ideologies. And so letting them out is kind of a wild card because sure, they'll attack the United States and all that sort of stuff. They'll attack U.S. forces. They might also attack some Iranian positions too. They're not exactly big fans of Iran. There's a reason they're in prison, right? I mean, you claimed actually on on Twitter that I didn't even know the difference between the Taliban and ISIS-K, which you provided no sourcing for, because I've talked about on my channel that ISIS.
What is the case? What does the K? What does the K in ISIS-K stand for?
Yeah, Khorasan. It's what they call their province in Afghanistan. So
fantastic.
But again,
actually, no. There is no province in Afghanistan called Khorasan. It's a province.
No, that's ISIS. That's ISIS interpretation.
You said it's a province in Khorasan. No, there's no province in Afghanistan called Khorasan.
ISIS. It's what ISIS calls that area. ISIS-K.
Okay,
but look,
again, you haven't even hit the point of what happened.
You can just go to these nitpicks about particular names, and I'm bringing up the morality, and you're failing on the morality.
So okay. So 1 second, Kevin, you responded to the first and second one. Do you want to have him respond to the first and second, or do you want to go through the last two that he listed, which was Yemen and what was the last one? Sorry.
I know. I need to attack him on this because you have not addressed the fact that we have to invade Iraq to get into Iran. You have not addressed the fact. No, you didn't, because effectively we now need to run. Are you honestly suggesting that we take the U.S. military and run pacification ops in Iraq whilst also attacking Iran, who is far better armed? And even a basic. You wouldn't have had to do this if
Obama hadn't pulled out, right? So I'm not a
first
fan
of all,
of Obama.
so back up. We had to run full pacification ops in Iraq. We actually ran full-time ops in Iraq whilst we were there. So you're suggesting that on top of the full plate of Afghanistan and Iraq, that we go into Iran, who has 400,000 personnel ready to go, who is better trained, more unified, and has way harder territory. Even the basic precursor, look at a map, it means they have to go through those mountains. And again, the US barely the US barely. No, it does.
It doesn't.
Did you miss the Zagros Mountain? Did you miss the Zagros Mountain sitting there?
Because we have to go. You think I'm advocating to send U.S. troops all the way from Iraq to Tehran? Is that what you think my position?
Yes. You said boots on the ground in Iraq.
No, I said boots on the ground to occupy the oil fields in the southwest to basically.
Then how is that moral? If your entire argument is getting rid of these people so we can free the people, but you're only taking oil fields, how the hell is that a moral fight?
Well, because I can explain. No,
Go
explain.
Ahead.
You
Go
just
ahead.
asked me, dude.
Liberate the oil fields. That'll make everyone happy.
Let's Kevin explain. Yeah.
Okay. So Iran gets a big percentage of their revenue for their government from oil. I think I've seen something like 80%. And so if you take away a large number, well, what's the number you want to give me?
Again, it's not 80%. I don't have the exact number on me. I'm not going to make it up either. But they do have oil fields.
You're going to disagree. They have oil fields in the Caspian. You're not going to provide. You're not going to provide.
Dylan can fact check that. Again, you're lying at the fact you said.
Let me just clarify.
No, I'm not lying. I'm not lying. That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
Okay. So is the disagreement that 80% is the entire country?
Again, it's not even the point. The point is that he said he wants to invade Iran to liberate the people and allow.
Wait. Okay,
80% of Iran's economy comes from Kazakhstan. That's effectively the argument you're making.
No, I didn't say Kazakhstan. They obviously have oil elsewhere.
He didn't say Kazakhstan. He said it came from oil, which could be
oil and gas.
Okay, but again, you're only talking about invading Kazakhstan. There are other oil fields in the north.
You're missing my whole argument.
I am, obviously.
No. I'm trying to answer your goddamn question, Michael. So
Jesus,
losing a big percentage of your government revenue when you have things like pensions to pay, you have things like troop wages to pay, just because you're losing all of it. Does it, like, for example, if somebody comes up to you, and I don't know what your money is, so let's just say, dude, I'm trying to answer your question. Let's say in a scenario, let's just say hypothetically, you make $100,000 a year and your expenses are $80,000 a year.
Again, I'm not. Again, this is a dumb
analogy. Wait. Okay, Mike.
I need to ask Kevin. I need to ask Kevin this one question.
Stop. Okay, look. Okay, I said I'd moderate it. If you guys want me to leave and you guys can have it on your own, that's one thing. But if I'm here to moderate. I want to have Kevin fully explain it, and then if you think it's silly or wrong, then you can tear into it as much as you want afterwards. Okay, Kevin.
Okay, yeah. So I'll explain this, and hopefully, if Dylan can get the numbers, if you got time for that, that'd be lovely.
I'll look them up.
of my point here, what I was basically bringing up was, in this scenario, let's just say there's no tax or anything, but let's say you make 100,000 a year and your expenses are 80,000 and you're saving 20,000, and then all of a sudden somebody takes 30,000 from you. Just hypothetically, I'm not saying that that's what the percentage is in Iran. Would you all of a sudden be in a tough spot? Yes, you would, because now all of a sudden you're short $10,000 that you didn't account for. Likewise here, I'm not saying that all of the 80% derives from oil fields in Kazakhstan. What I'm saying is that it's a big percentage. It would definitely hurt their economy, and it would mean that instead of having to invade literally all of their country, that you could just basically bankrupt the regime by holding some of their assets while you continue with aerial bombardments of their nuclear facilities, their missile positions, all that type of stuff, any other command and control positions. And then down the road, you know, obviously you couple this with, like special forces, all that type of stuff. But the bulk of the actual operation would just be in the Southwest. But the point that I was getting at earlier, and I guess we had a big issue about this, was that when I brought up the 2003 thing, I was trying to say that in 2003, going into Iraq was a lot harder than it would be today, and the U.S. still did, and it took 2 months to take down Saddam. It would not take 2 months to go through Iraq. Now, the last point that you brought up earlier, I wanted to address your other question about the nuke. Why would Iran use a nuke? I would be surprised if Iran launched nukes from their missiles at Israel directly. What I think would be a more likely scenario is that once they have nukes, and they might have a crude fission bomb that they don't need to test at all because it's probably a gun type device, if they were to hand that off to the Houthis or any of their other proxies, they could use it. Iran gets plausible deniability. Say the Houthis used an Iranian nuclear weapon. People would say, you know, Jimmy Dore, all these guys would say, oh, it was the CIA. It's just to try to give a pretext to go to war with Iran. Yet that is still a nuclear threat from Iran. That would still result in a lot of casualties of either, you know, U.S. allies or potentially even U.S. Personnel. So
once again, I got the number. So I was looking for the 80% number because I couldn't find the idea if it made up, like, it's not 80% of the GDP, 80% of the economy. But the 80% number comes from, sorry, I dug deep. So it comes from a statement from, sorry, I'm terrible, Paulie Simmons, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Economic and Business Affairs from the Department of State. This was a statement made, I think, in 2006. And here's the statement. As a matter of fact, Iran's revenues from oil exports were about 47 billion in 2004 and 2005, and that its oil therefore accounts for about 80% of Iran's export revenues. And oil exports to the extent of about 50 to 60%.
So two things. First of all, oil does not just come from Kazakhstan. That is where the majority of the oil comes from, but there is oil fields up in the north, and now there are large gas fields in the Caspian. Two, if they cut off the Strait of Hormuz, you've now cut the oil supply, and particularly if we're going to play the scenario of Bab el-Aman being cut by Houthis as well, you now have no oil coming from Saudi Arabia, you now have no oil coming from Kuwait and Iraq as well. So the oil price is going to shoot right up. Again, because there's a shortage in the market. This is economics 101.
Yeah.
So again, but I want you're saying, you came into this saying it's a moral argument, we need to go in, and then you're talking about invading a oil fields, which again, if you'd actually been to Iran, you'd realize that that wouldn't work, because if we knock their government out, it's by force, and they will not respect what government we put in there. We've seen this with Syria, we've seen this with Iraq, we've seen this with Afghanistan. The best possible thing we could do was the JCPOA, and it was working. If you've been to Iran, you know that under 50% of the population is under the age of 30. And they are educated, they are actually very intelligent. And again, I don't expect you to know, you haven't been there. So,
come on. Again, dude,
moving forward.
Let me guess. You think Let me guess. You think if you're going to do the average.
Let me finish my statement.
Wait. Stop for a second. You've both been doing ad hominem attacks towards each other the whole night. So I would like him to finish the statement, and Kevin, I'll give you plenty of time to respond.
So again, and after the JCPOA's implementation, we saw every single Iranian election, whether it be at state level or federal level, bring more and more progressive candidates. We saw guys like Rouhani come to power, who is the most progressive Iranian leader we've seen in a very long time. It was working. The fact is that within 20 years, all of the Revolutionary Guard guys would be dead. Iran was getting more and more progressive. It is moving in the right direction, and and because of it, other countries can invest lots and lots and lots of money into it. The French and the Germans particularly started building up a car industry, started building up telecom industries, and by canceling the JCPOA, it was not only terrible because the Chinese bought up all of that effectively all of the investment that the French and the Germans and the EU would put into it. B, it destroyed trust in the United States. And when I speak to diplomats, which I do quite regularly, they all say, well, I signed a deal with China. It's a 20-year deal. I signed a deal with the US. I don't know if it even lasts the midterms because the US are tearing up deals, even though they're done by previous administrations. So, and C, it gave the hardliners the ammunition they needed to go back to the Iranian populace and say, look what happens when we trust the West. You know, because of it, we've seen every single election since the JCPOA has been torn up is now going more and more, back down the old roads. Whereas before, whilst the JCPOA is in place, we saw progressive candidates winning every single election. Again, progressive by Iranian standards, not by ours, but moving in the right direction. Again, it's a young country.
So there's a lot there. So look, I'm gonna address this. So the first point about how, well, you haven't been there, so you probably don't know that. Let me guess. You probably think I think the average age in Egypt is like 60 or something. I'm aware that a lot of these countries have really skewed population pyramids that tend towards people under 25. You don't actually have to go to a place to know that. And I also find, and I will say this, I will address your questions, but I also find this to be a relatively classist argument because you said, have you been outside North America? No, I was born dirt poor. I'm still relatively poor.
So was I.
I make $30,000 a year. How am I going to get the money to go out there? Once I can do my show full time, sure, absolutely, but I'm not there yet, right? I'm grinding. I'm on that Sigma male grind set, but I'm not there yet. So that's great. You've been to these places. Unfortunately, the problem for you, right, Michael, is that you've been there. You've talked to these diplomats. You got suckered in. You fell for the big lie. The problem with the Iranian system. Look. The problem with the Iranian. It happens. I'm not just saying it happens to you. Dennis Rodman went to Kim Jong Un and thought he was a great guy. Look, it happens. People get charmed. What the problem with the Iranian system? The problem with the Iranian.
Wait. Well, to be fair, he did an attack on you during your thing.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Go ahead.
Just did it back. He's allowed to. You're allowed to. Okay, continue.
Yeah, tit for tat, bro. So, okay. So the point was that you'd have to be like, look, I haven't been to Iran. That's true. I haven't, but I at least know that the illusion of reformers and hardliners is a facade because they're all with the blessing of the Ayatollah. So if the Ayatollah wants to present to the West, and actually Daniel Borgman, he's a guy I've got some disagreements with, but he does great coverage of this and actually looks at their propaganda, talks about, what are they saying in Farsi, what are they saying in English, what's their message to the world, what are they saying domestically. When you look at if the Iranians, if they want to get money and they want to get concessions and they want America to be nice,
which they can't because of American sanctions.
If they want to get sanctions relief, all this stuff, what does the Ayatollah do? He says, let's allow the quote unquote reformers to be the public face. But then
we did. They let the reformers go in, and they still join up the JCPOA.
You believe the illusion. What you don't understand is that the supreme supreme leader is the Ayatollah, and at the end of the day, if he wants to present a nice face, you get the progressives you're talking about. If he wants to present a strong face, or if he wants to go tough, he gets the the Ahmadinejad people, the Ahmadinejad people. And so the point is, what you're saying is, oh, well, all these progressives are winning and stuff. What you don't understand is that all of this it's basically a puppet master system where it's the Ayatollah who appoints everybody, who decides who gets to run anyway with their council. So you've fallen into this idea that they're somehow democratic and they want to be nice to us. No, they want money so that they can continue their terror operations and secretly enrich uranium as they were doing. Look, I hate Donald Trump.
One of the
few things that Donald Trump was right about was that they were that the JCPOA was dumb and he refused to continue it. And so Iran.
Secretly enriching uranium. We literally had inspectors on the ground. We know they weren't secretly enriching uranium because they actually did follow the JCPOA. They did what we asked of them, and they went forward. And again, I'd love to know where you're basing that, because look down the barrel of the camera and tell me you are smarter than the State Department, than Joseph Votel, than Jared Blanc, than any of these guys, even Anthony Blinken. I watched a stream of you saying Anthony Blinken hadn't read the JCPOA. You think
Anthony Blinken is a goober. Anthony Blinken is somebody who just surrendered with his boss, 40 million people.
Kevin, I want Kevin, stop for a second. I want you, Kevin. Kevin, I want you to look down the barrel or down the camera and say, I, Kevin Castley, who has never, ever worked in the field, who has never done a single job in foreign policy, I am smarter than the US, than Antony Blinken. I know more about foreign policy than Antony Blinken, even though I've never worked in the field and never done anything. Look down the barrel of the camera and honestly tell me you think that.
Yeah, well, fine. I'll give you this. So I, Kevin Castley, host of SuperPower Broadcasting on Twitch and YouTube. Follow me on Kevin Castley on Twitter. I, despite not having as much credentials as
Kevin,
Tony
you
Blinken,
Kevin, you don't
work
in the
question,
field,
dude. I'm answering your fucking question, dude. I, Kevin Castley, despite having fewer elite credentials than Tony Blinken, have a better moral compass and refuse to negotiate with terrorists. And I refuse to buy Tehran and the Ayatollah's line that they didn't do anything wrong. And I refuse to be suckered in to believing a bunch of reactionary fascists as they try to get nukes to conduct a second Holocaust.
Okay, so wait, both of you wait for a second. The stream is sponsored by I Can't Believe It's Not Butter. It is a wonderful butter substitute, and I would love it if all my viewers at home used it. There we go. Thank you. Now you can continue, Mike.
So, again, he's actually been working in the field a long time. He's read the GCPO.
And he's wrong.
I've read the GCPO.
That's more embarrassing.
No, but what are you basing it? You've never written any papers. Again, we have the same degree. We have the same goddamn degree.
In political science. That's not true. I wrote
yes,
papers.
I did international relations and economics. We have the same degree.
Yeah, we have the same degrees.
You've never been picked up. You've never done anything in the foreign policy because you don't understand the very basics that foreign policy is not black and white.
This is complete ad hominem. I'm going to respond to that shit. I did write papers. I didn't try to
university.
I didn't try. I'm trying to answer your fucking question. I didn't write papers for journals because I did not want to be an academic. I created my channel. If you go and look at my channel, I created my channel, I think in 2012 or 2013. Yet I didn't upload any content until April of 2019. And I graduated, I officially graduated in June of 2019, but I finished classes a couple months prior to that. The reason why was because I knew I wanted to be a YouTuber. I knew I wanted to be a streamer. I just figured I needed a job or something. So I figured I was going to go into a bank, yet I got well pilled on debt by Dave Ramsey. So I decided I didn't want to do that. I never had any desire.
You don't have to be an academic to write papers. You don't have to be an academic to write papers.
I'm trying to answer your accusations, okay? I'm trying to answer
anyone get a paper published.
Your accusations right now, Michael. So for me, I had planned to upload content. Yeah, I was very busy with university. I took something like 80 courses in 5.5 years, and I wrote a lot of papers.
80 courses.
I had no desire. Michael, you're not good at this. You actually need to work on your listening skills. I can recommend you some books.
I'm employed in the field.
I can recognize you. Well, okay, great, but you don't know how to listen. I can offer you some books that they use in my local elementary school on how to improve your listening skills, right? And they have cool graphics and pictures and colors. You'll love it. You'll learn a thing or two, right? So it'll be great, Michael. You'll have a great time. You'll have a great time. So
as entertaining as my chat is finding this, right? Because my chat is loving every second of this. I do have an interest in actually, because I don't get to host foreign policy debates very often, and moving it away from Kevin Castley's academic background for a moment. So I just want to, Kevin, you can finish.
Lack of. We have the same degree.
Exactly, but you've never done anything in the field.
Degrees are worthless.
Yep.
You just
agree.
You just took the L. You just took the L. Down goes Michael. Michael. You just nuked your own.
Shut up.
You just nuked your own.
I agree that my degree is not what taught.
That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. You're not good at this, Michael. You might have your degrees and stuff, but you're not good at rhetoric. You're not good at debating, dude. You're not good at debating, dude. You're not good at listening, dude.
Let me finish my sentence. I agree that my degree wasn't what got me where I am. I agree that it was actually sitting in the field. It was actually talking and doing journalist work, working for think tanks, actually doing research, actually publishing papers, actually going out to these countries and actually doing on the ground stuff. That's what actually shapes my foreign policy, not I did a degree. A degree opens a door, but actually doing work in the field is why people get hired and how people work in these places. And again, you going, oh, his degree means nothing. Yes, I agree. I learned more from sitting in the field. I learned more from actually looking at foreign policy papers, actually meeting with diplomats, actually doing the work than I did from my degree.
You got charmed by Rouhani or whatever. That's embarrassing, dude. Rouhani's a facade of the Ayatollah's desire for Iranian imperialism and blood empire. So to go back to your question, your allegation of me that you're basically
after this though, can we please move off of this?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So you're discarding or diminishing my input on foreign policy because even though we have the same degree, you're saying, well, I don't work for any think tanks or whatever. I went the entrepreneurial route and I run a stream where we make foreign policy fun. We do Ghoul Gang Rising every week with Spooky Nukies Saturday night, 11 p.m. Pacific, 2 a.m. Eastern, where we make fun of Tony Blinken. We make fun of Ned Price. We make fun of Joe Biden. We make fun of their claims. We make fun of Ilhan Omar. We make fun of CEOs that shill for China and say, the Nike CEOs said that that Nike's of China for China. We do all this stuff because what I learned from university was that we've got a lot of people who are very educated, but they're not actually that bright, and they fall for Russia Today, they fall for Kremlin propaganda, or even some of them that might actually go and work and meet people, they fall for the facade of the regime. And so for me, what I do is my job is to cut through cognitive dissonance. It's to make foreign policy interesting. It's to promote, the basically humanist morality in the world. I also talk about other issues too. One of the reasons why I didn't want to necessarily go and work in a foreign policy think tank is that I also am working on books. I talk about, women's rights, that sort of stuff. I care more than just about this, but the reason why I'm a hawk, obviously, is because I care about women's rights, for example. And so you're content to work with the Taliban. So like you can talk about this as, oh, well, you didn't write any papers for journals. I didn't want to. I don't want to be a professor. I want to be a streamer, dude. So it's really. I don't
want to be a professor, but I want to teach people on my YouTube channel.
No. But professors can't say the stuff that I do, otherwise they get fired, right?
Because professors have to come from educated points of view.
Freedom, Michael. I like having the freedom to call Tony Blinken a moral relativist goober and be able to say that. I couldn't do that.
Wait, to be fair to Kevin, okay? If I was a professor and I went and I started challenging other streamers to boxing matches, I'm pretty sure I'd probably get fired.
You probably get fired.
Yeah.
Probably get fired.
Again, I'm not saying you have to be a professor. I'm saying that your opinion, the fact that you think you know more than the actual people who work on the ground, the actual people again, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world. I listen to people who are on the ground and are smart and are educated and effectively are actually doing work in the field. Anthony Blinken is going to get better briefings than what I am and far better briefings than what you get. He's actually going to be able to get the information.
But
so again, again, you say he's naive, but based on what? I mean, frankly, the first thing. Yes, I have quite frequently.
Well,
actually,
he wants to get back into GCPOA. That's ludicrous.
Yes, and it's because it was a good thing. Again,
that's ludicrous.
Yeah, you're saying it's ludicrous, but you have nothing to back you up. You've got no credentials.
So that's not true. That's not
true.
And
you've just said, because why? Why was the JCPOA bad? Considering the Iranians were actually doing what they were told.
Yeah, so the JCPOA.
We were seeing Iran go more and more progressive with every single election, both at state and federal level. And yet you think that because you have some, I don't know where you're getting your information from, but sure, that the JCPOA is bad, even though that pretty much everyone who are high up in the State Department who's been doing this for 20 years knows that the JCPOA is working.
Okay, so
the only people who didn't want it was effectively the Israelis. Yes, that's
Mike
it.
Pompeo, to my understanding,
who's opposed a political appointment. And again, Mike Pompeo.
Tony Blinken's a political appointment.
Yes, and when Mike Pompeo said that, he was pro JCPOA under the Obama administration, and then flipped. And that's what I'm saying. Anthony Blinken's been pro JCPOA the whole way, and actually sticks to his morals, whereas Pompeo just went, Trump doesn't like it. Yeah, well, Trump doesn't like it, so I'm flipping. Again, policy didn't change.
So Trump was right about that.
Based on what? What were we getting from the J?
Daniel Boardman is somebody who talks about this. As I said, if you would check out his channel, he's actually gone into.
Again, I'm not looking for YouTubers. I'm looking for actual people with experience.
I'm trying to answer this. So he's somebody he's obviously very focused on Israeli security, and so Iran is a major threat to that. He talks about the Farsi propaganda, where they'll basically have mushroom clouds and talk about how they're going to nuke the Jews and all this stuff, at the same time as how on the international stage they'll send out Rouhani, they'll send out all these guys.
I don't also trust Marjorie Taylor Greene.
They'll go out.
You know,
They'll go out and they'll say that they want to be nice. That they want to play nice. That they want to play nice. And yet the reality of the matter is that Iran had every intention. Yeah, Dylan.
No, I said the mic to let you finish your point.
Oh, okay.
Again, so again, you're basing this off.
Yeah,
fine. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure that because there's a lot of talking over each other. I just want to make sure people can hear it. So, and I'll let you speak right after. Okay.
Okay. So to kind of conclude with this, the point is that Iran basically has a hidden agenda and a public agenda. Their public agenda is, we'll get the reformers, we'll get the nice guys out to go and get the money, go and get $150 billion of Iranian assets were unfrozen as part of the JCPOA. That money was put into both financing the terror around the region and domestically, as well as their nuclear program. And so now there's two aspects to the JCPOA. There's an argument of it was working, and then there's an argument of should we get back into it, even though even the UN says they've got 12 times the allotted or allocated levels of enriched uranium under the JCPOA, which makes it a lot harder to get back into it, given that they potentially, and even by the UN's IAEA estimates, have enough material at least for one fission bomb. It's a question of whether they have it or not, but they at least have the material based on the projections from the IAEA from September. So the point was, so just to finish this, the point that I'm making is that it's all good to have a bunch of Harvard degrees or to have a bunch of decades of experience or briefings, but if you get charmed by and believe what are the right-hand man of the Ayatollah, then I don't know what to say. You're a very credentialed and prestigious goober. That's what I would say to that.
Mike.
Okay, very, very, very mature on the goober one. But you're basing your entire thing of we want to nuke the Americans based on effectively the far, far right. For the same reason I don't base American foreign policy on what Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks. You know, what you should actually basing foreign policy is what the Iranian Foreign Office does, what the Iranian leadership wants to do, which is very different to what very far right guys. And again, the far right guys wouldn't be in power if we kept going more progressive.
Is the Ayatollah far right?
But the Ayatollah also knows that if he pushes too far away from where the parliament is, that he's likely to be, that resentment is going to build up and he may be overthrown. So you find the Ayatollah generally when the parliament moves left, so does the Ayatollah. This is basic Iranian politics. So again, now you said no. Again, but why then would they allow all progressive movements and this foreign investment to come in and allow the French and the Germans to come in if the Ayatollah was as, far right as you think? And again, I love the fact that I've been brainwashed by, all these guys when I speak with lots of guys. I work with China and Russia and America and all sorts of places. So I actually get a lot of different opinions. I work with the Americans and ASPI and all sorts of think tanks. Yeah.
Michael, there are a lot of Nazbols that would love what Iran has to say, Russia has to say, and China. That might sound contradictory. There are people out there like Haas that would definitely agree with all of them. You're
just saying that I'm brainwashed based on you're not immune to brainwash.
That you can't see the Ayatollah as far right now. And now there's a little bit of a distinction between far right in general and the Iranian political spectrum. Mm-hmm. The point is that the Ayatollah is a reactionary who right now is leading basically wars of blood across the Middle East. And one reason to answer your question of, well, why would they want to get into the JCPOA and why would they want to do this if they weren't serious about it? The reason why they wanted to deal with the US and the EU or the European powers and Russia was so that they could get, $150 billion or so in their money that was frozen. Mm-hmm. Like people say, Trump said, Obama gave them American money. He didn't. It was Iranian money, but I don't consider it a legitimate state. So I think you have a right to freeze terrorist assets. But
how is Iran not a legitimate state?
The point about why they would want to get into it.
You just answered this question. How is Iran not a legitimate state?
It's very simple. It's very simple because the problem with Iran isn't just that they have nuclear ambitions, and the problem with the JCPOA isn't even solely related to what it does about the nuclear program. It's that we're legitimizing the largest state sponsor of terror that even if they had no desire to get nukes, even if they had no nuclear reactors, even for civilian purposes, they'd still be the guys sending people like they used to do with Soleimani out to kill hundreds of thousands of people across the
again,
region.
because-
They'd still be
again,
financing the
because
Houthis.
they're-
They'd still
because
be
they have
waging
no
a
choice
shadow
but to
war
actually-
against Israel. They'd still be attacking Saudi Arabia's Abqaiq facility. All of these things happened, and all of these things basically had nothing to do with the nuclear program. So to act as if the only problem with Iran is their
had
nukes.
to do with the sanctions.
No. The problem, the reason why, but they wanted the sanctions lifted so that they could have more money to fund terror and get nukes.
No, they wanted more
sanctions. Why should we encourage that?
Let me tell you a story. Last time I was in Tehran, I went to a bank and I handed them 50 euros because, again, they have no connection with the international banking system. So you have to walk around with cash. Again, this is terrible for the Iranians and the situation there is dire. But I went to a bank and handed them 50 euros and they said, sorry, sir, we don't have that much money in the bank. We can combine 2 banks and we'll get that much money together for you. They don't want the money for that. They want the money to actually build some goddamn infrastructure and actually get the economy back on float. They knew that the living standard, the people's happiness with the government, and everything improved under the JCPOA because more foreign investment came into the country, because the real got more foreign backing, and because the country actually was able to trade their shit with everyone apart from Russia and China. By closing the JCPOA, not only did it allow China to buy up all of effectively the German and French investment for pennies on the dollar, because they had to give it up. But it also put Iran further into the camp of Moscow and Beijing, something that we didn't want. Again, now with your nuclear ambitions, you should know, and I'm almost certain you know this, that there's a very big difference between enrichment for nuclear energy and enrichment for nuclear weapons. And again,
and what percent are they enriching to?
Yes,
it's higher.
Why? But we wouldn't even
civilian.
They don't need it because, as we put out earlier on, closing the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb would be far more detrimental. The approval of a war with Iran is 18% in America, if you look at the last Gallup polls. And even if we want to go down that road, it's going to take you months to cross the Zagros Mountains. And by that point, the Americans are going to be in real economic trouble because the oil market's going to shit itself, effectively, with Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. No, let me finish. I was polite enough to let you finish. So your suggestion of that the Iranians will accept that we bomb them and, hey, here's this dude, now he's your leader. No, not ever going to work. And it didn't work in Afghanistan. It didn't work in Iran. The fact is, by putting more progressive candidates, yes, the Ayatollah is far right, but he also knows the fact that if the parliament moves this far left and he doesn't move with it, that he is likely to be overthrown or ousted. And that's what he knows. And the JCPOA is doing that. Effectively, within 15 years, the Iranian revolutionaries are dead, and we actually have a reasonable government. Again, I'm not expecting it to be Sweden. I'm expecting it to be somewhere in the vicinity of a Turkey about politically. Again, they have good nationalism. They have good, they have a domestic arms industry. And to go invade them, is just mind-boggling that you think we can make it across the Zagros without nasty amounts of casualties. The US couldn't even take Afghan hills, and the Afghans are armed terribly using shitty Pakistani weapons. The money that we gave them is to, yes, I'm sure some of it went into the IRGC, but they only use the IRGC because they're boxed in. Frankly, if the Ayatollah goes and the Revolutionary Guard goes, and when I speak to most Iranians on the ground, they go, yeah, the revolution's all right, thing, but, Dad likes it a lot. Once that generation goes, and if we'd actually been progressive, if we'd show them blue jeans and Coca-Cola the same way that we did with the Greeks after the Second World War, or the Turks, or even the Italians, we would see a much more friendly Iran. One we can work with.
How's that working out with China right now? How's that? They got the Nike, they got the Pepsi. How's that working out with China right now, Michael?
Again, China's had more people lifted out of poverty in this period.
So
than
we're going
any
with
other.
tanky apologies. Okay,
no,
great.
I'm not going
out
with tanky apologetics.
I'd love to get you on the record with this.
We're talking about Iran.
Let's go.
We're talking about Iran.
I know you don't want to talk about China, right?
No,
because China,
because that's a 2-hour conversation.
Okay, this is great. This is great.
So you're honestly telling me that the best thing. So far, your actual justification here is we should take the oil fields of Kazakhstan, which we both agreed due to basic economics 101, which I'm sure you would have taken in degree. That with that amount of oil, that amount of
position, I didn't agree with your position. I didn't agree with your position.
Answer the question. No, answer the question.
You're straw-manning my position right now.
Answer the question.
Will the price of oil? Straw-manning my position on the Zagros Mountains.
Will the price of oil? Okay. answer me the
straw
question.
manning my position.
Will the price of oil go up if the if the Iraqis, the Kuwaitis, and the Saudis cannot produce oil?
Okay, so
will the price go up?
Answer the question,
No,
Kevin. Wait, let me
asking
finish.
that one question. Will that price go up?
Okay, so answer the question, and then if you feel like he strawmanned your position, you can restate your position.
Okay.
Go ahead, restate your position.
Yeah, so of course oil prices are going to go. No shit, if they cut off the Strait of Hormuz, which of course they would do, oil prices are going to go up. My concern isn't a temporary 5-year oil price hike. My concern is stopping a nuclear war, potentially a second Holocaust against Israel. My concern is liberating
Which JCPOA got rid of the nukes. How do you not understand
your question, Michael? Again, I can recommend you. What is it? There's like a what is it? Johnny Learn How to Listen or something at one of the elementary schools. I think they teach it, so you can work on your listening skills. So my point was, of course, they're going to go up, just as how blockading China, just as how sanctioning China would cause prices to go up on consumer goods. But the point is to avoid a nuclear war by enriching them to the point where an actual hot conflict happens. The point is,
which is what JCPOA did. It got rid of the nukes.
Take the hit. And then get rid
I'm not
of
taking the hit.
the
JCPOA got rid of their nukes.
My question to you, Michael, is if we wait for them to start a war, will the price of oil go up once there's a hot war between Iran and Israel, or Iran and Saudi Arabia? Of course it's going to go up. Of course it's going to go up. Now, I want to address the point about the Zagros,
so we're going to start a war
which you straw man my position, because you know this probably more than most people. You would know that the Zagros Mountains are to the northeast. The northeast. Oh yeah. See. Oh yeah. No,
You're in the northwest. What are you talking about?
I love how all you have is he accidentally had a V on it as if it was Russian for a second, and then corrected himself. Therefore, even though I'm immoral and I've laughed at Hitchens,
keep going your point. Just take the L. Keep going.
All you have are these nitpicks where it wasn't even an effective nitpick because I corrected myself. As you would know, the Zagros Mountains are to the northeast of where the oil fields that I was talking about was. So you're straw manning my position by saying that I want to send tons of divisions of U.S. troops over the Zagros Mountains. I didn't say that. I said occupy their plurality of economic exports, like where they get a big source of their income from. Occupy that temporarily. Couple that with bombardments of their command and control, their missile sites, their nuclear sites, etc., and bring the regime basically into submission. And then at that point, you get you basically at that point go about setting up a new state down the road. But it's not all we're just going to go from Iraq to Tehran overnight or over a month or whatever. That's a mischaracterization of my position. Now, I personally am more concerned about removing the largest state sponsor of terror, a grave nuclear threat, and a massive human rights abuser than I am about some oil prices. Who gives a shit? Oil goes up and down all the time. Who cares? Like, don't get me wrong, it'd be bad. Don't get me wrong, it'd be bad. But you know what would be worse? A hot war with Iran once they actually do seriously attack Saudi, not just bomb the Abqaiq refinery once they go full out, right? So
first of all, I don't even know where to start with this. First of all, we need to stop them so they get nukes. That's what the JCPOA did. It was the main thing of the JCPOA, and it actually worked. We had UN inspectors, we had IEAA inspectors, we had everything on the ground, and you'd be an idiot to not think it is. Now, second of all, now we blow up their command and control, and we instate a new government. Yeah, that works super well in Afghanistan and Iraq. They totally accepted who he pulled out. It didn't. No one accepted the government. They had no legitimacy.
That's not true. That's not true.
That is very true.
And then why, Michael, did people fall to their deaths trying to escape when the Taliban took over? Why? When America left, people shit scared. Why? It was almost as if they actually supported the Americans and opposed the Taliban. The Taliban's 80,000 fighters. They were mostly brought out of Pakistan. They're not fans of the Taliban.
Again,
the Taliban.
Let's bring your volume down, buddy. Okay, so
so the
Taliban. You say the oil. No, I want to the other one. The oil price. Yes, even if you take Kazakhstan, which is the majority of their oil, they have oil fields in the north and the Caspian, and with the increasing of oil prices, they're likely to actually make up that revenue because they're the only guys selling oil at that point. Because their infrastructure can actually get out through the southeast. and their infrastructure can go into China and Russia and into the European markets of the Caspian, whereas the Iraqis cannot. Again, these are very basic stuff right now.
So you
Again,
don't
laugh while you're wrong.
You don't think that the U.S. would bomb pipelines? You don't think that the U.S. would also bomb pipelines? I'm not saying send troops over there, but you don't think that the U.S. Air Force is
you realize how detrimental losing that much oil? So now, for instance,
you don't understand.
Right now, oil production is down by
almost energy independent. You act as if it's the 1970s. It's so cringe. The United States,
again, because
less than 10% of its oil from that region. So this is stupid. It's not the 1970s.
Yes, but the Americans are private industry, and right now the Europeans, particularly as well as the Indians, get most of their oil from the Middle East. So if the price goes up because effectively all their oil disappeared overnight, the Americans aren't going to sell it in America if they can get it for this price in the other markets. So there will be an oil shortage. Right now, even just the fact that there's less oil being produced due to macroeconomic terms that were done a year ago, the price of oil is up and it is hurting every American. And again, as I'm sure there's Americans in the chat, when the petrol goes up, the price of everything goes up. These are very basic economic 101.
But I never disagree with this. I was saying that that's a price that you pay to avoid waiting for Iran to start the war on their terms. So let me put this.
So let me just wait. Let me see. I just want to talk about your balance sheet here. So for the price of damaging the world's oil economy, effectively putting the American economy in a bad position, the fact that none of our allies will follow it, because when Trump actually started rattling the saber last January before COVID, January 2019, because time doesn't matter anymore, they're not going to follow us. You have to invade Iraq and do pacification operations who will attack your supply chains. And again, you couldn't even do that when they were there. You have to get over the Zagros Mountains, which they are well armed and have some of the most shoulder cannons you could possibly ask for. The Iranians can then sell their stuff to other markets while you cut off the only route out for your partners in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. You also have the fact that Houthi is going to hit the desalination plants in Saudi Arabia. All of this, and let's just call it. Let's say
right now.
Say no, they're not. That is the nuclear.
That is the up to Jeddah.
Yes, but not at desalination plants,
dude. No. They fired rockets up to Jeddah.
No, but let me finish. Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point here. So you are saying all of that, and let's call it conservatively 100,000 casualties. Rand puts it at somewhere around 180,000 to actually go and take Iran. So out of all that, and what do you get in exchange? Something that the JCPOA would have done in 15 years anyway. You know how diluted that is to when all of this bad stuff in exchange for something that was literally on the table and doing. You're saying, but it doesn't work based on what?
As if the only problem with Iran was their nuclear program. As if that's the only issue I have with Iran is their nuclear program.
Which is why we were liberalizing them the way we did with Turkey and Italy and Yugoslavia.
What you don't understand, dude.
No, I don't understand.
What you don't understand is that, or at least, I guess I should rephrase, what you don't particularly care about, at least, is all of Iran's other shenanigans in the region. So obviously propping up Assad. But you just don't want to do anything about it. Okay, well that's actually worse then. It would be better if you
because geopolitics is not left or right. It's not.
It would be better for you. It would be better for you, Michael, if you just came out as America first or Australia first and said it's not my problem and I don't care. Because what you're doing is essentially popping up and legitimizing. What you're doing is legitimizing the regime. You're also not very good at listening. So I wanted to say about the point about the Zagros Mountains, again, with the straw man, I'm talking about the Southwest before Zagros, coupled with airstrikes. And you were talking about the pipelines. Okay, those can be destroyed. Those can be, you don't have to bomb every inch of a pipeline to take it offline, right? It's kind of like an airfield. You don't need to bomb every inch of a runway to take it offline, right? And so these things are actually easier than you're laying out. Now, the point about the macroeconomic factors, I don't disagree with you. The point that you're missing, you do know there's Russian anti-aircraft missiles sitting in the Zagros. The point that you're missing, Michael, is that some things are more important than money. I'm not some neoliberal corporatist who's concerned about my stock sheet. What I'm concerned about is American hegemony. What I'm concerned about is the liberal world order. What I'm concerned about is dealing with the largest state sponsor of terror in the world, which is JCPOA.
So you don't care when a mom's grocery bill doubles because the oil price doubles.
Even if we were to be charitable to the JCPOA, and say, oh yeah, it actually would stop them from getting nukes, which is not true. And Daniel Boardman goes over it in far greater
Daniel
detail.
Boardman is a YouTube channel. He's not an expert.
I never claimed to be an expert per se.
You claim Daniel Boardman is, and he's a YouTube channel.
I am a foreign policy streamer. You also claimed, oh, this guy claims to be an expert, like how some of Dylan's opponents say about him. Dylan never claimed to be an expert. I never claimed to be an expert. Dylan obviously has a very different position than me, but we run into people calling us experts. I never claimed to be an expert. I am a dude who covers this stuff. And
so we should listen to the experts. So we should listen to the experts. We should listen to the experts then.
No, because the experts
we should listen to the experts.
No. You're missing me, Michael, because the point
I am,
is,
because you're not an expert. We should listen to the experts.
The point is, I don't care how much credentials you have. If you're any moral solipsistic, moral relativist, realist piece of shit that's all down to do business with a bunch of reactionary fascists in Iran, you would have traded with Hitler. You would have traded with Hitler and said, oh, going to war with Hitler, that'll hurt our oil prices. Fuck that. Fuck the neoliberal establishment. Fuck your oil prices. Fuck your consumer prices. I want a liberal world order, and I'm willing to pay a high price to get it. I'm willing to pay a high price to get it, which you're not, because you, at the end of the day, only care about your own backyard. And when you step outside of it, you get charmed. You get charmed by thugs in suits. You get charmed by terrorists in suits. As long as they put on suits, it's okay. If they're ISIS, they're bad. But if it's Rouhani, he's got a suit. Oh, it's okay. He's overseeing an empire of blood. You got charmed the same way that Chamberlain got charmed. You got charmed the same way Dennis Rodman got charmed. And it is fucking embarrassing. And the fact that you are technically an expert makes it all the worse, because it means that despite all of your knowledge, you are morally bankrupt. So there you are, Michael. How do you respond to that?
So I actually can't. So how does it affect my backyard? When the price of groceries doubles, that actually hurts a single mum who's on a single income. That actually hurts the American economy. No, you said, why would it matter of petrol prices? Why would I care about that? I'm not caring about it for stock prices. I'm caring about it because when the price of oil goes up, it hurts every part of the economy. And people are living paycheck to paycheck, and it is going to hurt the lowest income earners the most.
Yeah,
and again, that's basic economics.
So
and here's the thing. How does bombing Iran help
a mom in Wisconsin? Do you think that oil prices will go up if Iran starts a war with Israel or Saudi Arabia? Because they'd also cut off the Straits of Hormuz then. Once they've got nukes, once they can do whatever because they've already done it. They literally attacked the Abqaiq facility in northeastern Saudi Arabia, which is the largest petroleum refinery in the world. And guess what? Saudi Arabia, being the hippies that they are, I've defended them, but let's be real. No, dude, I've defended them, but let's be real. Saudi Arabia is the most combat averse, the most war averse people out there, where it wasn't even until 2015 that they figured
Saudi Arabia is combat averse. They're fighting in Yemen as we speak. What are you talking about?
Until Yemen, they never really did shit. And there's a
reason
why they're so inaccurate, and why they didn't know.
What are you fucking talking about?
There's a reason why you can watch videos of Houthis popping their tanks that aren't even guarded by infantry, because they had no idea how to do warfare, because they're a bunch of hippies that wanted to sit and collect money and just trade with everybody. They're not hawks. And so when Iran attacks them directly, guess what? They didn't even retaliate. That's how peace-loving the Saudi people are. And yet, here's the thing.
Peace-loving Saudi people.
Here's the thing. Oh, you think they overthrew Hadi? You think they overthrew Hadi? Is that right? You think they're the ones that wanted the war in Yemen, right? Look, you're an Iranian mouthpiece. That's what you are, Michael. You're a mouthpiece for Tehran. You're a mouthpiece for the regime. You're a mouthpiece for empire of blood, and it's embarrassing.
At best, you're talking about invading every country in the Middle East.
At best, you're like a John Mearsheimer realist. This is embarrassing, dude. This is absolutely unbelievably
realist
embarrassing.
Is what I am.
Realism is degenerate. Realism is depraved. Realism is oh, they can do a Holocaust as long as it's in their own country, and we can have democracy as long as it's in our country. It's just state interest, bro. It is morally bankrupt. It is morally depraved. It is morally nihilist. It is morally relativist. I'm a universalist. I want to see a progressive liberal world
You
in
also
every
think
corner
that
of the
Saudi
world.
Arabia's
And
full of
I'm willing to do
hippies.
what it takes to get it, which you are not, because you
No,
are
you're
not a
not.
true
You're not.
liberal. You are not a true
You've never been
progressive. You are
overseas. You've
not.
never
You are
gone.
not concerned about fighting the Taliban. You are not concerned about fighting Iran. You're concerned about grocery prices. Well, fuck that. And guess what? The consequence of what you would do would be the same thing of what Chamberlain would do. The war happens anyway, except now when they start it on their terms, it's costlier. The oil goes up, the groceries go up anyway, and now we might lose, or our allies might lose. So it's better to deal with it sooner on our terms than wait for them to start it later on their terms when they're stronger and have
Okay, so first of all, if you're going to invade Iran, it's going to take 3 months to build up anyway, and they could do what they want anyway. But there's no way Iran is going to invade anyone else. That's just not what they do.
They're already doing it, though.
They use proxies, but the Iranian military itself doesn't go invade other countries.
Oh, okay, so you admit they do. That you admit they use their proxies to do a lot of bad.
So does the United States and Russia.
Oh, but that's a false equivalence. That's a false equivalence.
Okay.
Guess what? I support the United States. I don't support Iran. I'm not a relativist. I actually believe in America. I actually believe that America is morally superior to Islamofascism. Absolutely. Absolutely. You're doing these false equivocations. Oh, Moscow says this. America says that. How about this? Moscow's a homophobic reactionary shithole, and America is a progressive capitalist wonderland. How about that? How about that? How about that?
Have you ever been to Moscow,
Michael? Oh, you got charmed. Let me guess. You got charmed by the Ruskies in the Kremlin, too. You got charmed by the Kremlin. Peskov charmed you, right? Is that right?
Okay.
Is that right?
Again,
you got charmed. Did you have wine? Did you have wine with Lavrov, Michael? And it was a great dinner date and the Kremlin. Did you guys go up to the White Rabbit Hotel?
Okay.
The Volga?
Okay. You guys can write your gay fan fictions later. Okay. But right now I wanna finish this conversation. So I wanna drag it back to this. It seems the main disagreement now seems to be about. Kevin believes, and I'll try to make the best interpretation, and then I'll make the best interpretation of both your arguments, okay? I want to avoid trumping. Kevin believes that the economic impact that you're talking about is not the issue, because he has such a moral issue with the government in Tehran that the impact that would be felt by many people would be worth it to deal with this reactionary power, especially since, in his view, this war is inevitable anyway, because he sees their nuclear development as inevitable following a JCPOA strategy, which he would believe would be ineffective. Is that a good faith interpretation of your argument, Kevin?
Well, it's basically, except the other point about it was, even if we wanted to get back into the JCPOA, even if you thought it could work, what do you do about the fact that they very clearly, as according to the UN, have the material for a fission device already? That kind of changes things.
Okay,
so we did that. We did that with Libya. We got Libya to hand over there.
Okay.
We've done this before. What are you fucking talking about?
So Mike's wait, please let me do this, okay? So Mike's argument, and Mike, you tell me if I'm wrong anywhere, is that the strategy that Kevin is advocating for here would not only, of course, lead to a war that would lead to a lot of people dying. And I think you specifically said 180,000 would be a guesstimate casualty number.
An estimate based on rand. Yes.
And it would have an economic impact that would make the lives of many working class people around the world more difficult, and it would hurt the American oil market, and that is how it's going to happen, because prices in Europe would go up, and then American private sellers would, of course, interact with that market, and that would mean American markets prices would go up. So the economic impact would be bad, and you can avoid all of this anyway, both the nuclear impact and the economic impact, by doing the JCPOA, because you believe the Iranians would not only be guided by the JCPOA, but did so when they were under the JCPOA, and that by doing this, we're making them more regressive instead of progressive, which we could have done with the JCPOA. Is that a good faith interpretation of your argument?
That is a good faith, and it's not. It's the opinion of Joseph Voto, head of Central Command. It's the opinion of State Department. It's the opinion of the Middle East Institute. It's the opinion of almost every educated think tank.
Okay, so now that I've stated what you both agree is the most good faith interpretation of both of your arguments, I would like you to interact with those instead of like whatever straw man either of you could have had in your head and personal attacks. Could you both do that for me?
course.
Okay, so I'm going to have Kevin go first. Understanding, Kevin, that his position isn't that Iranian girls should all like live under fascism, and Mike understanding that Kevin's position isn't that he doesn't care if people die or something. Okay, Kevin, you start.
Okay, so Mike then. So the point about Iran, if you don't take out the Iranian regime, under the most, I guess, favorable position to what you've been arguing, you would claim that you get back into the JCPOA, which that alone is probably, given what they've got now, which changes the status quo. But let's just say you get back into the JCPOA and you lift sanctions and you do all this trade, and now the regime has a lot more access to money. Like you've already said that they would have more access to money if you were to do that. What's to stop them? I guess my question is, what's to stop them from going the same route as China? That's kind of what I was trying to ask before, because what you said was that China lifted a lot of people out of poverty. The problem with China isn't them lifting people out of poverty per se. The problem with China is that they're an anti-liberal power, and they're using a lot of that money that they wouldn't have if it wasn't for our investment. They're using it to build up the largest navy in the world. What's to stop Iran from then using that money, even if they didn't pursue nukes? What's to stop them from using that money to actually increase their proxies around the region? What's to stop them from using even more money now to support Assad? What's to stop them from basically becoming kind of a mini China, where now they're even richer and more powerful as a center of Islamic extremism in the world than they would be today, when they're relatively weak, even if they didn't pursue nukes? How do you stop all these other things?
First of all, how would Iran be China? That's just, even the basic geography doesn't. Yeah, sure. Whatever.
I mean, mini.
So again, as I pointed out, we had under the JCPOA, every single election that Iran had went more and more progressive, and so we know that Parliament is also going to get more progressive. And you keep that trend going, which it was under the JCPOA, you don't have people who prioritize, IRGC operations. They prioritize fixing roads. They prioritize building up school systems. They prioritize actually fixing things in Iran, and they prioritize working with the other government, because people, the average guy who sells potatoes on the street is actually going to be better off under that. This actually helping the Iranian economy, as I pointed out earlier in my story when I was in Iran, actually helps people in Iran. Sure, you can say they'll have more money to do that, but if the parliament continues to go more and more progressive, then why would they? For the same reason that Turkey was once an extremist who we had to get rid of, but because the West invested in Turkey, because we actually put time into Turkey, we had Ataturk. We had effectively a very cooperative partner. That's why Turkey's still in NATO today, and Turkey is a whole another topic as is. But again, you have no evidence that go start a war beyond proxies, because once you actually get rid of that old revolutionary guard, it becomes much less of a prerogative. They don't have to fight for ports on effectively the Mediterranean coast, because they can just send it off their coast. And again, all of this is at the expense of American lives, of Iranian lives, of Iraqi lives, of effectively the world's economy. It's also at the expense of American friends around the world. Because again, when Trump was rattling the saber, all the allies of the Americans were saying, we're not going to go in with you. We're not going into Iran. It's why that even Bolton, as much as a war hawk as he is, actually got the briefings from the State Department and looked at how devastatingly awful a Iranian invasion would be, and how much the Iranians would fight, because they are willing to fight to the end. They are proud people. They're not, like Iraq, which is effectively 3 nations gaff taped together. They're not like Afghanistan, which is effectively 9 nations gaff together. They are a coherent nation, and they will fight, and they will not accept us just plonking their leader out and putting someone in. They will accept a progressive, slow change that we can help foster and fund it and help, but they will not accept us just eliminating people. For the same reason that if effectively America came in and kicked Trudeau out and put some random guy, put Mike Pompeo as the leader there, Canadians aren't even though they are close to the Americans, aren't going to accept that. It's just the geopolitics and foreign policy is not black and white. It's not either or. It's slow, it's incremental, and it's a million shades of gray. And that's how geopolitics works. And again, this is, it just boggles my mind that you've looked at this and gone, I'm happy for 180 to die on the American side.
That's
I'm
a
happy for
straw
a
man.
million.
That's
I'm
a
happy
straw
for I'm happy for the Americans to die. I'm happy to tank the economy
Nobody's
for
happy
the price
about
of
American
what?
deaths. Nobody's happy about American deaths, Michael. If you're going to
You're the one advocating for war.
No.
You're advocating for war.
No.
You are advocating an invasion of Iran. How is that not going to cause American deaths?
You don't think that if we wait for Iran after they get nukes to start a war, you don't think that when America now has to go to war with them, that more than 180,000 are going to die in that war?
Why does America have to go to war with them?
So,
we didn't.
Because if
we
they
didn't have to.
Israel,
the JCPOA meant we didn't.
Israel,
they
if they
weren't
nuke Israel, you don't think? Yeah,
pretty hard to nuke when you don't have nukes from the JCPOA.
Okay, stop. Wait. Okay, we were doing really good.
Pretty hard to nuke someone when you don't have nukes from the JCPOA.
Wait. Okay. 1 second. Is my microphone broken?
No, it's all good.
No.
Okay. Am I speaking in Chinese? Did I learn Mandarin? Okay, because I was sure I was trying to moderate. So we were doing really good on the good faith stuff. We only got 15 minutes left on this because we've been going for almost 2 hours now. So I as much as this is like porn for me.
He said I was happy about American death.
Yes. So you did say that. So I do want to try to bring us back into the good faith area. I'm going to have Kevin respond to that. And then after we respond to that, let's get back onto the explicitly policy discussion. Kevin?
Yeah. So basically, it's like saying it would be similar to me advocating for invading Germany in, say, 1937 or 1936, before Hitler started the invasion of Poland. And you say, oh, but if you do that, let's say 10,000, just hypothetically, 10,000 Americans would die in that. And then I say, no. I mean, okay, let's say 180,000. Let's just use that number. 180,000 Americans would die to take out Hitler in 1936, but he doesn't invade Poland. He doesn't invade the Soviet Union. World War II, as it happens in Europe, is far more limited, but 180,000 Americans die in this. Would you support it? No, I'm trying to, dude, you mischaracterize.
Kevin, we're going to have you finish, and then I'll let you respond. Mike, I just want to make sure that everybody gets the last points out since we're nearing the end.
So in this example, say it takes 180,000 Americans then to kill Hitler and take him out before he can wage this war that kills, at least in Europe, well over 35 million people. In that example, I say, let's do it. You say, oh, you're happy about 180,000 Americans. I say, no, if we don't do it, more Americans are going to die anyway when World War II gets serious. And then you call me a bloodthirsty neocon who's happy about American deaths. Guess what? A lot of Americans died in World War II. Is something like over 400,000. I know a lot of that was in the Pacific. But the point that I'm getting at is that more Americans, and it's not, I'm not just concerned about Americans. I'm not some jingoist. I don't even live in America. More people will die in a war with Iran that they start down the road than would die to take out the regime before they get a serious nuclear arsenal. Like I said, they may have one bomb, but I'd rather do it when they have one crude fission bomb than wait for them to become the next North Korea, basically, where they've got 100 or whatnot. And the point about mini China, I wasn't saying that they're going to have like a ton of businesses and stuff there. What I was getting at was we tried this with China. We thought that by trading and giving them money, that they would liberalize. They liberalized economically, but then politically, they're still a communist hellhole that's doing a genocide. So at the end of the day, my original question to you was, what's to stop them from going the route of China? Because you were saying that they get more progressive, but China hasn't gotten more progressive. They've gotten more reactionary. And they've gotten more money. So it seems like money just makes the bully richer. It doesn't make the bully nicer. If you preemptively give the bully your lunch change, is he going to become a good person, or is he just going to be empowered? Is he going to be a bully with swag? Well, now he's going to be a bully with swag because he didn't have to fight you for your lunch money. So,
Mike.
So, Kevin, I can tell you've never sat in a house that's been bombed out. You've never talked to people who've actually been bombed.
Here we go.
You've never actually sat down and asked these people what they want. You've never actually gone to a town where the Americans have bombed, and it sticks with you once you've actually spoken to people who've been through air raids, who've been through attacks. But comparing Iran to Nazi Germany, dude, comparing Iran to Nazi Germany, dude, as I've said before, the world is not a game of hearts of iron. There are more options on the thing.
They're modern Hitlers.
There are more options on the. They're not. There are more options on the table than just
they
declare
execute people
war
for being gay, dude. They recently hung people for being gay, dude. You're insane if you don't think they're fascist.
Okay, so
They're Islamofascists.
Kevin, I told him to not interrupt you while you were doing your statement, and he largely fell by that. So I'd ask you to do the same since we're near the end. Okay, Mike.
Okay. Again, comparing Iran to Nazi Germany in 36 is just dumb. There are different options we have on the table right now. We had the JCPOA. We have actually building up ties with them. Your entire thing of we got to get them before they get us. There is no reason for Iran to go beyond what they're doing at the moment. Why would they attack Saudi Arabia? Because once they do that, they elicit. The Houthis launched a few small attacks, but why would they go start a giant war with Saudi Arabia? Because it pushes a giant, conflict on them, and they don't want that. The Iranians don't want to fight the Americans, and the Americans, aren't stupid enough to go fight the Iranians because it's a nasty, nasty war that will have huge economic flashbacks. And I know you don't care about economics, but economics is what actually allows a mum in Wisconsin to buy her bread. Actually allows people to invest.
Too. I make $30,000 a year.
I'm working class as well.
On me, dude. So,
well, again,
as a guy who's working, as a guy who, my co-host is working class. We're both humanists. We're both Hitchens.
Yes.
So
we're both. I'm working class as well. Journalists don't get paid a lot of money. That's poor. First one, I've worked with union movements. I've actually worked in workers' rights policy. This is, I'm working class as well. Don't get me wrong. And it's why I realize that economics has a huge impact on the average person. The average mum in Wisconsin isn't going to worry about what's on, but they're going to worry what happens to petrol Bowser. And again, you're going for a war.
Morality matters whether you care about it or not. Like if people get executed for being gay, I don't care that some isolationist.
So you think we should go into invade every country that accuse people of being gay?
If they don't reform, like for example, let's say we take down Iran.
Come on, Kevin.
No. I'm answering your question. I'm answering your question. As Hitchens said, look, we can't fight everybody at once. We have to go down the line. But once you take out,
Hitchens never worked in foreign policy.
I don't believe you would have to, because once you take out Iran and North Korea in quick succession, all these other regimes. All these other regimes.
Korea as well now.
These other regimes, Michael. Once you prove to the world that within 2 years you've taken down two of these huge reactionary powers. Once that's clear, now all of a sudden you've got Venezuela. Now you've got Syria. You've got all these regimes. You've got all these regimes. You've got all these regimes calling up Washington and asking, what can we do to not go down that route? And that's why I have a video called "It Only Takes a Few Purposeful Wars in Quick Succession to Liberate the World," because the other dudes would be shit scared that they were next, and they would not. I don't remember continue in their ways, because right now nobody takes America seriously, and I also don't like you. Okay.
That kind of number one. That kind of came off of an interruption, so I want to make sure Mike can get his statement out uninterrupted going forward. I do my best to moderate here, but I'm also I can't mute either of you because we're on a group call, which I would be doing more of, but I just can't. But I also want to say, for those of you who are interested in North Korea conversation, me and Kevin Castley actually had a debate about whether we should nuke North Korea about 8 months ago. Which is about
a year ago, I think.
Yeah, a year ago. We disagree on that one as well. I took, of course, the pro-nuke position. I'm joking.
Nuke Bill Dillon.
I'm joking, of course. Mike, you can continue.
Okay. So first of all, invading North Korea is a whole other kettle of fish, and we've done entire pieces on that as well. So, but it just, I don't even know where to begin.
Somebody spooked.
Again, no, not spooked at all. Like, you're just throwing economics aside. Like, it's the very basics of foreign policy. You're talking about yes, you are. You're saying that economics doesn't matter.
You don't think that oil prices go up when they invade.
Stop, Kevin.
Again, you have no evidence to back, a Iranian nuke hitting Israel.
You will both have ending statements with at the end of this where you'll be able to rehash all your points. Please, Kevin, don't interrupt again. I'm asking you. Okay. I made sure he didn't interrupt during your thing. Okay.
Again, there are two types of people in foreign policy. There are realists and there are unemployed, because people actually have to take into account more than just morals. And going after, they kill gays, we need to kill them, would mean that we're at war with half the world. And again, Hitchens, you keep using Hitchens, but Hitchens never worked in foreign policy. He's not an expert in foreign policy. And so again, Why are you putting the opinion of someone who's never worked in foreign policy above people who actually work in foreign policy and work in it? And again, I'm not saying myself, I'm saying the generals, the State Department. No, this is my time to talk. This is my time to talk.
You'll have time to answer it after, Kevin. Don't worry.
Again, you're talking about horrific conflicts for stuff that we can do diplomatically. Again, the world is more complex than, Team America is not a documentary, my dude, and the world is more complex than a Hearts of Iron game. It boggles my goddamn mind that you would consider that we should invade Syria, to which we did some things in there and it didn't really work. Iraq is in shambles and we have a delegitimized government in there who is effectively being run by Iranian proxies. Going into Iran is something that even Bolton looked at the paperwork and said, that's a terrible idea. Afghanistan has been a dismal failure since 2005. Now, that's not a good track record for your wars of just plucking them out and, hey, I put John Smith in, you love John. Because the world doesn't work that way. These people aren't just, just robots. They're actual people who have love of them, and they actually have opinions about how they worked with by the international community. The best thing we can do is bring these people into markets and bring them into the international system. And it's something that has worked and has evidence of working. I'm going to gesture toward Turkey and Greece and all these other countries who we did bring into the international system, who were pariah states at one point. And effectively, they are now reasonable people to work with. I have evidence.
Reasonable?
Pardon?
Uh-oh. Erdogan? Okay. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I'm going to clip that.
Yeah, fine. Clip it in. I don't care. Because he has some reasonable points. He has unreasonable points. But he's still more reasonable than most of the other Middle East partners. You're just running to nukes and attacking so quickly that it just, you're talking like a man who's never seen a bombed out village, who's never spoken with someone who's been attacked, who's never actually had to deal with the repercussions. To you, this is a Hearts of Iron game. You move chess pieces around. You actually have to worry about the difference between a mum having the price of petrol double and she can't get to work, the fact that the Europeans will never respect the Americans and they'll fall out of alliances if we do this. The fact that we already. Yeah, because the Americans had all the respect from the
allies like France. Who needs enemies, dude?
You know why? Because we went into Iraq.
And
because we followed people like you.
No, Iraq's a great place compared to what it used to be.
Yeah,
You'd
not
rather
really.
live under Ba'athist Iraq and have your wife get raped by Uday Hussein.
We've got 5 minutes.
You'd rather have your wife get raped by Uday Hussein on your wedding day than be in Iraq today, dude. It was a rape.
We got 5 minutes.
You
Let's wrap this
state.
up.
Yeah, you can't be that ignorant of how awful Iraq was. One of the reasons why I bring up Christopher Hitchens is that he was a strong advocate of
can you make this your ending statement? Since we're only
we got 5 minutes to finish. We don't have time to get into Iraq.
Okay.
Well, you make this your ending statement, Kevin, and then Mike,
go ahead, take your opening statement.
Okay.
Fine.
And by the way, if anyone says anything during anybody else's ending statement, I'm just gonna end the call. Okay, I'm just making that very clear because the ending statements are always non-interruptible. Okay, Kevin.
Okay. So my opponent brought up a lot of stuff tonight. My opponent said, you're either a realist or unemployed. Well, I'm not unemployed. I have a channel. We are independent foreign policy commentators. We actually have morals. I care about morals over money, if that's not clear. One of the reasons why I don't work in the foreign policy establishment is that the foreign policy establishment is morally bankrupt, and that should be evident as seen tonight by one of their, representatives, at least in this debate. It's very clear that realism, as watching the John Mearsheimer lecture, very, very morally relativist, very morally depraved, very morally bankrupt. And so, yes, I am working class, and I do care about morals more than price of bread. Because guess what? I personally could just go out and get a higher paying job if I put the energy into it. But if I was born in Afghanistan, if I was born in Iran, if I was born in North Korea, I, of my own volition, could not improve my situation by putting more energy into something, because guess what? My family does something, I get accused of something, now I'm in the gulag or worse. Now I'm 6 feet under. So at the end of the day, my opponent lives, despite traveling to these countries, he ultimately lives in a position of profound privilege, to the point where at the end of the day, he can talk about a bombed out house. He can talk about this sort of stuff, but he doesn't see the terror that happens in the countries where that sort of thing doesn't necessarily happen. There's no war in Iran right now, yet there are people that are at the end of the world is for them because they happen to be gay, and now they're being executed. These are terrorists who wear suits. They're not going around doing the ISIS thing necessarily. They'll pay other people to do that. They wear suits. They have nice conversations. My opponent gets to go there and meet them and get charmed by them, just as Dennis Rodman did with North Korea. It, at the end of the day, is very clear that we need to have a morally centered foreign policy. That doesn't mean you divorce that from reality, because we know we can't invade everybody at once. But as I said before, it will take a few purposeful wars to actually deal with the situation. Once those are done, the rest of these enemy regimes that are very problematic right now will start reforming. Why? Because they'll know that they're next. And so you don't actually have to go to war with the whole world. All you need to do is prove a point. All you need to do is liberate a couple of countries, and all of the others will fall like dominoes. And Saudi Arabia will go that route. The UAE will go that route. Qatar will go that route. Turkey will go that route. And if they refuse to comply, then yeah, they'll know that they're next. But they won't refuse to comply, because they will actually take America seriously again. And I will close by saying that if you'd like to keep up with my stuff, follow me over on Twitter at Kevin Castley. You can watch me every day on Twitch at SuperPower Broadcasting. I do daily streams, and I upload content to YouTube as well. And we're coming up on 1,000 subscribers right now. If you want to support me, I'm entirely funded by, my supporters. Patreon.com/SuperPower Broadcasting, Ko-Fi.com/SuperPower Broadcasting. No, I don't have a Harvard degree, and no, I'm not paid $100,000 a year to parrot the Iranian regime. I am an independent and moral lion, and this is what I do. #HotGang. Let's go. Thank you, Dylan.
Okay. Now we're going to throw it over to Mike.
So the idea that we can knock over a few of these countries and they'll all surrender afterwards is ludicrous. When the Soviet Union fell, there was still a bunch of dictator regimes running around. When Iraq fell, there's still a bunch of dictator regimes running around. North Korea is not going to surrender because Iran was conquered. That's ludicrous to even suggest that. Frankly, it would actually encourage them, because the Americans would be isolating themselves from even more of their allies, knowing that, they're effectively isolating themselves in the international community. It helps build up the case to work with China and Russia, because they're not the ones just bombing the shit out of everyone. You said I'm being paid $100,000 a year. I'm working class as well. Journalists don't get paid that much. Like, that's the plain of it is. You said that, I'm biased because I've been to these countries and I got charmed. I met with average people. Most of being a conflict journalist isn't sitting there talking to the general. It's actually sitting in bars and sitting in cafes and sitting in markets and actually talking to people and asking their opinion. Getting hey, what would happen? Hey, what do you think about this? That's what actual journalism is. It's not just sitting in hotel rooms. The fact that you think I've been charmed, it doesn't make any sense. You're putting it like it's a bad thing that I've actually gone and spoken to the people that actually might know the answers we're talking about. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually what most good journalism does. You talked about, the fact that nuking citizens is just, a morally good thing to do. It's not. I have friends who live in these cities. Nuking them is not going to solve this problem. In fact, it's going to just make it worse and make the Americans look even worse. It helps
cities. Please. I understand.
So, this kind of talk is what radicalizes other people. This kind of, we'll just pacify them and we'll take Kazakhstan and we'll take we'll radicalize all the Iranians. It'll radicalize the Iraqis. It'll radicalize anyone in the Middle East. The fact is that terrorist attacks will go up if we actually do that. And again, I've said it 100 times and I'll say it again, war is economics. And I agree, going after their oil would help do some damage to their economy, but it drives the price of oil up on everything else. It's not worth it. You effectively just made any oil-producing state not in the Middle East incredibly powerful. So, this message brought to you by the government of Venezuela and Algeria and Angola and Indonesia and Malaysia. They're going to do great if the oil price goes up and we've cattled the Middle East. So congratulations, you've just probably helped the Venezuelans a lot. So, morals... You say that, I wouldn't work for the State Department because I have morals. Morals doesn't put food on the table. Morals doesn't actually do anything. What actually makes the difference to someone is actually being able to feed themselves, to actually use the petrol bowser, to actually be able to go and seek a better job. And you can laugh all you want, but that's the truth. Again, the world is not a game of hearts of iron. The world is effectively, a series of shades of grey. And yes, we work with some bad actors and we work with some guys I don't particularly like, but bombing the shit out of them and trying to put someone in who, either A, we have to stay there for 10 years and spend trillions of dollars. And again, we spent more money on Afghanistan than it would cost to do an entire high-speed rail network in the United States. You know, it boggles my mind that we're going, yes, people would rather have, you honestly think that people would rather have, you know, a petrol prices going right up, the price of groceries go up, spend another bunch of money on a conflict that, again, is not going to work. The Iranians are not going to accept someone that we just knock over and put in. We had a good idea with the JCPOA and it was working. And again, you can say, oh, but I saw this YouTuber who said no. Again, I am going to kind of side with the experts on this one. So again, it's been great to chat with you tonight. And Dylan, longtime fan of the show, and it's been great to talk some foreign policy here. But morals is not everything. You know, Team America is not a documentary, and nuking people is not usually the answer. If you believe in the shining beacon of America, if you believe in what America should be, then America should be showing other people, you know, through investment, through bringing in jobs into their country, through actually working with these people, because that's worked. I can point to countries where that strategy has worked. We're keeping majority of the government in, getting rid of the bad actors, and effectively keeping the country running, and investing in the country has worked. And you're going, well, my option worked in Iraq. Well, it didn't really work in Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria. Again, this is the difference between evidence-based journalism and commentating. And I'll then leave it on that.
Okay, I will say, though, that comment about journalism not being staying in a hotel room, we don't condemn Tim Pool in any way from his time working in Vice and conflict reasons when he just stayed in his hotel room and said that was journalism. Okay, sorry, I needed to get that dig in there. I just always find that story very funny. Anyway, thank you both for coming on. You two can go make out on your own time now and go on a dinner date. It was very energetic, not exactly what I was expecting, but I know chat enjoyed it, and I'm happy I was able to follow along with the conversation. And I was able to at least make sure that I could show what you guys' arguments were in good faith while you guys brawled out. So we got to have a little bit of both. And of course, both of you are invited back on the show anytime you want. Just send me a DM. And love the Red Line. I've been listening to a few more episodes recently. Your recent one on terrorism was really good, by the way. Yeah,
that was a really interesting one. We did a piece on terrorism funding with the head of the Treasury's financial crimes, ASPI's, was the Australian Strategic Policy Institute's head of counterterrorism strategy, as well as Kevin Mulroy, who worked for the CIA. And they gave their how terrorism is funding, why it's hard to cut off, and effectively how the region's working.
Is there any special project you're working on, Kevin, that you would like to shout out?
Yeah, so right now, as I mentioned earlier, I do a foreign policy podcast every week with my co-host, Spooky Nukies. We do Ghoul Gang Rising, where we review what we consider to be the worst clips on foreign policy takes, like Kim Iverson, Jimmy Dore, Tony Blinken, sometimes Joe Biden, and we go through and we watch them in full. We don't just take like a 30-second snippet and straw man their position. We actually watch the entire clip, even if it's 20 minutes long, and sometimes it takes us 2 hours to get through that clip, but we go through why every single talking point, as we see it at least, is incorrect. And that's our project. We just passed our 50th episode on that, and we're going on to 100. And so and apart from that, always doing debates and stuff. I'm a debate me bro. So if anybody in the chat wants to debate me on anything, you can shoot me a DM over on Twitter at Kim Castley, and we can set up a debate too. Thank you, Dylan, for moderating. And also, I do want to say you completely eviscerated Hawes. I mean, that was probably the most embarrassing performance by Hawes that I've seen. Him backing out of that after he was all gung-ho about it. So
well, and the Taiwan it was supposed to be a Taiwan debate at some point too. It was very interesting. For those of you who don't know, I assume Mike, I went to a debate conference to debate Taiwan, and it went a little off the rails. There was requests to go outside and throw hands. So
have you got a clip on that you can send me?
The whole YouTube video is my last upload if you want to watch it.
Perfect. I'll be checking that out this afternoon then.
Awesome. You both have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye-bye. Hey, you. Yes, you. Right there. You. I am starting a Patreon. I know you guys have been asking for it on the YouTube crowd for a while, since Usually it's just the Twitch people who could support me financially directly, but we're finally making a means for you guys to do so as well. And that's not all. You can support the #1 cyber terrorist, mover and shaker, Vince McMahon of Twitch politics. How? By donating to this Patreon and getting benefits like movie nights, special Discord roles, announcements at the end of the video of how much you have supported this war criminal DylanBurnsTV, and much, much more. Okay, not much more, okay? I only have limited means, but more than that, I can assure you. And if you support the Patreon, you will have my deep-hearted appreciation from the bottoms of my soul that you are truly a mover and shaker. Thanks so much for your Patreon money in advance. I will use it to continue to fund the liberal elitist agenda.